Does he have it?
Medeiros is going to get it.
They're going to toss it. They haven't got it.
He's on the outside line though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly, Miller's still start trouble. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry! Good Car Championship Round 8 live from the Hungaroring. I am James Parfait. I'm going to be here joined in the booth with Jake Sansom here this evening, and we've got Paul Glover on production in the back giving us these great camera angles here this afternoon, really, in with it all as well. And it's going to be an interesting one here from the Hungaroring. Let's have a look at the calendar as it is currently set. At this moment in time, as I say, we are here on round 8 for the Hungaroring, 250 kilometers here this afternoon. We go on to Suzuka on the 29th, on the 2nd of September for the 400 kilometers of Suzuka. Donington on the 30th of September for 250 kilometers of that one. Austria on the 24th of October, 28th of October for the 250 kilometers of Austria. Miami on the 25th of November, and then we round out the season with Laguna Seca on the 2nd of December. We can look at the track here today. 14 corners, 4.38 kilometers, 2.72 miles, and built in 1986. Don't forget, we have got that orange zone where any incidents and accidents and overtakes and any form of collisions at all will be more severely punished, right the way from the start line all the way up out of the chicane of 6 and 7. The tyre choices here today will be ones on the for the LMGT ones for the tyres as we wait for them to come up on the screen. There we go. For the LMGT ones, it is the softs, the wets, and the hards. For the GT2s, they do have wets, intermediates, hards, and softs. So they do have a little bit more choice here as well. With the challenges these drivers are going to face today, we have got Tyre Deg is going to play a massive part of this race with the high temperatures there as well. It's fast and hard to pass. Now, the Hungaroring can be at times very difficult to overtake, can also not always bring the best of racing, but I'm sure these guys will be providing us with some excellent racing here today as well. Now, we can check out the scores on the doors as they currently are right at this moment in time. In the LMGT ones, it is Magnus Dahlgren in the Toyota GT1 out in front with 45 points and 3 wins on the board. And he finished in second place in Dijon with Daniel Kirby, who took the win. Daniel Kirby in second on 26 points. Wouter De Bruyne on third with 24.5. Ethan Funk in fourth with 22. And then we've got Timon Suvic with 13.5. Johnny Gutierrez on 10.5. John Yuon on 9.5. Francesco Concas on 9 in 8th place. Brian Hall in 9th on 6.5 points, tied with Felipe Enrique. Jason Whitehead in 11th on 5 points. Luciano Icazo on 12th on 4.5. Alex Garrick in 13th on 4.5, with Alexander Schultz in 14th with 3.5. Gilles Lalonde in 15th with 3 points, and then Jonathan Coudray in 16th on 1.5. Then we've got Norm Graff, Victor Geneva, Adrian Rice, and Gilles Villeneuve, the last of the point scorers. Brandon Gann, Alec King, Risto Corpi, and Tom Lane, no points on the board. In the team standings, ME Racing are out in front on 51.5, with CMS Pro in second, Depth Racing and Shorts Rennsport behind that. On to the next LMGT1 AMS. It is Becky Ely out in front on 44.5 points with 4 wins to her name. Wayne Hutchinson in second, George Antolidis third, and Barry Dimarzo in fourth. Jerry Chen fifth, Stephen Miller in sixth, Eric Monet in seventh, Tom Mountjoy in eighth, Gwilym Benk in ninth, Oliver Day in 10th, Mike Olsen in 11th, and Tony Boynton and Graham Duncombe have not got points on the board. In the teams, Momo Scudiera Cavelli are out in front on 55, Golf Racing 47.5, Speed Details on 43, and Hardtail Racing on 45. On we go to the LMGT2s. It is Ross Smith out in front with 40 points and 2 wins to his name. JT Tammy on 30 and also 2 wins. Matthew Overton in third on 29, and Ben Borman in fourth on 16. Dave Cause in fifth on 14, with Joe Miller in sixth on 7 points. Jeffrey Ellis on 5 points. And then we got Vasilis Katarinakis on 3, and Tim Vandenberg has not scored any points. In the teams, Rookie Monsters are out in front on 61, with Dark Thunder Racing on 43. In the LMGT2 AMS, this is how it looks currently at the moment. Peter Meyer out in front on 50 points with 5 wins. Filippo Marazzi in second on 38 with 1 win, and Maximilian Petrovsky in third on 10. Matthew Sibioni in fourth, Eugene Mazur in fifth, Josh McGlinsky in sixth, Paolo Tempera in seventh, Alan Hanglin is in eighth on 0 points, and obviously only one team in this one. Rook Motorsports is out in front currently at the moment. So that brings you up to date with all of the team standings here as well. If you're watching on the JBB YouTube channel, welcome in, or on the CMS, thank you very much for joining us. Like, subscribe, turn on the bells, that would be absolutely amazing. But you've listened to me waffle on as we come into the last 5 minutes of practice. Let's bring Jake into the booth. Jake, welcome in, bud. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Waffle, you clearly knew what I had for breakfast. Very good start to proceedings, and my goodness me, of all the circuits that we could have had a tight, twisty and technical challenge in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship Historics, Hungaroring definitely provides a lot of drama. It's one of those circuits that's very difficult to get right, but very, very easy to misunderstand in terms of setup. With it being quite so tight and technical, you obviously get quite a lot of different badinage between the teams and drivers here, but it can get quite tricky. And as you're watching the panos going around the circuit, it can be a very interesting and intriguing one. It's certainly, I think it's going to provide us with some very exciting battles out there tonight. It's a slight depletion of the field in GT2, but certainly in GT1, you'll get plenty of the exciting battles that we are used to seeing across the categories. So it'll be a very interesting one indeed. And with this being a 250-kilometer race, it's going to have plenty of intriguing strategy battles laid into it as well. There is the other CMS Pro panos of John Uyan. It'll be interesting to see how they go over the course of this particular course. Looking at the circuits that we've had previous to this one is a little bit more uphill and down dale, and that's definitely going to make things a little bit more intriguing, James, particularly when it comes to setup and strategy.
Yeah, I think that's going to play a massive part here as well, to be honest with you. You know, they've got to make sure they come in at the right time. They've got to make sure they get it right, because if they get it just slightly wrong, could cost them massively. And I think that's one of the things that these drivers are going to have to go out and try and get right. You know, the Hungaroring is not massively known for overtaking, and at times it can be a little bit tricky, and people can trip over each other as well. You know, you've got got the sharp braking zone of turn 1 here, Jack, and then we go up to 6 and 7. You know, it's all going to be tough for certain drivers, and they've really just got to try and make it on point. Don't rush the overtakes because you're going to have time. You know, make sure that anything you're going to do consistently and correctly. And I think that's one of the things they've got to try and look out for. And it is a renowned circuit for difficult overtakes. And I think today's not going to be any different. I think there's going to be a tough run as well. And the likes of Magnus Dahlgren, Dan Kirby, you know, they've all got to be fighting it out here. And it's just going to be very tough for them all. So there you go. We have just entered into qualifying. And we are going into a mixed qualifying. That's partly because of the depleted field of the GT2s, of course, here as well. You know, Jake, where are we looking here on track? Because we can sit here and summarise and say turn 1's going to be an overtaking point, turn 2, if you can get the inside, could be a run as well. You know, 6 and 7's a bit tight, but what do you think overall? Where are we looking for overtakes?
Well, I think you're probably going to find a few drivers trying to get a decent run out of 3 and then set it up for turn 5. It's a lot wider than a lot of drivers first realise, and certainly in esports I've seen quite a few drivers in different championships have a look at turn 5. You're probably not really going to get the best of it until the end of the lap though, and certainly heading into turn 1, that's probably where you're going to be best. This next corner, the right-hander, I've seen quite a few drivers try and make a bid in esports races here on this inside line, and that's, you've got to be brave to do it. You've also got to rely on the car to have good power down and good traction to make it all work out. But obviously it does give you just a little bit of opportunity. Some will try that chicane we've just been through. Another opportunistic opportunity here to try and get the overtake is not through the right here necessarily, or through the next left, but if you hang it in behind the driver that you're pursuing through this right-hander and manage to set things up nicely, there could be an opportunity for a race overtake coming down into this tight right-hander towards the 3rd sector. This is where you get to see quite a few drivers being just that little bit more adventurous, as we see Ethan Funk in the Depth Racing R390. So going to be interesting to see how they go. Mixed qualifying, obviously, it's not going to make a massive difference to the way things play out, because, of course, it would be quite normal in the stature of things to have that 10-minute session, but just because we've got limited drivers in GT2, it kind of makes it fairly pointless to have a 10-minute session purely for 2 cars. But what we are going to get to see is a very interesting spread of drivers as they head out. Pole position is going to be quite tricky to predict. This is one of those circuits, one of the few circuits in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship calendar that I've had the great pleasure and honour of walking around on foot in person. And this one, the elevation change is absolutely startling. You wouldn't believe just how physical this circuit really is. And while you get a sort of a semblance of the difference in camber and elevation change in the world of esports and real life broadcasting, it's not till you actually put your walking shoes on and have a go around the circuit for yourself that you realize just how steep and how heavy these drops can be. It's a fabulous race circuit, very underrated actually, as far as I've always been concerned. The location for a vast quantity of the filming for the Gran Turismo movie, and certainly it's given us plenty of great excitement over the years in multiple different categories of motorsport. Tonight is going to be absolutely no exception. The thing about racing on this circuit is it's all about rhythm, and it's difficult to get that rhythm. We've just gone through that middle sector from that chicane. You basically end up having to do a pair of left-rights, but they're quite fast, they're quite open, and getting the line right along with the acceleration, the turn-in point, the throttle application, the purity of the grip, and also trying to make sure you've got your shifts correctly. It all adds up. This place is all about rhythm and metronomic pace, and if you get it wrong, you can lose a massive amount of time.
Yeah, that's a thing that they're going to have to look out for. One slight wide into turn 1, getting turn 2 and 3 wrong as well could cost them for the lap here. So they've got to be on point through the whole amount of time of this racing. As you say, that Pro and Am isn't, or the LMGT1s and GT2s, you know, is not going to make a big massive difference. We've only got a couple of GT2s. We've got Smith and JT Tammy here, so back markers I'm not expecting, to be honest with you, Jake, really to be a problem. I think the GT1s we should be able to get through quite happily here as well. As we can see, Risto Corpi on pole at the moment on a 1:37.7. and Day taking the pole in the LMGT1 AMS on a 1:39.927. What are we in conjunction to this race here? Are we looking at 1-2 pit stops? What do we think people are going to play? Because with a short field, you could go in early and then end up losing a bunch of positions. So you've got to kind of get it right. But are you going to be looking overcutting, undercutting? What's going to be do we think what's going to be the best formula here at the moment?
It's a very good point, actually. With a depleted field, that does kind of change the mentality a little bit. I reckon you're probably going to see a few drivers try and be a bit creative in the first part of the race, because there is an argument to suggest that you would stretch a decent position and then just try and get the pit stops out of the way, so kind of get them early into the race, and then you can filter back into your rhythm. But I do find it very interesting that there's going to be a handful of drivers that will try something a little bit more routine compared to some that will take the gamble and be just that little bit more brave. You have a bit of a interesting diversity with this circuit. Conformity and normality don't always play into the tactics and strategy around this place, because it is a circuit that has a tendency to bite back if you're not prepared for it. It can give you a little bit of a nasty shock. Risto Corpi, currently on the 333 SP, the Ferrari, one of the only prototypes that were around in 1998 sports cars at the time. So great to see the last pure Ferrari prototype before obviously the recent ones of the modern era, where we saw them take the victory at the Le Mans 24 Hours just a couple of months ago. But Risto Corpi in the 333 SP and putting himself into another lap time. Let's have a look on board to get a real flavour of this particular circuit. Traffic does play into a lot of the mindset of the drivers here. So coming back to your question, James, trying to figure out where to actually make that bid in terms of the first pit stop. It wouldn't surprise me if a couple of drivers that manage to get into the top three, if there's a bit of a gap pulled out, they might decide to come in early just to consolidate the amount of clear track that they would get from coming in early, because this circuit really does lend itself to mistakes, and you really want to have as little side irritations as possible. You don't want too many distractions. So making an early pit stop and therefore getting yourself out into clear air down at the back of the field might actually be more beneficial.
Oh, yeah, Risto Corpi getting it a little bit wrong there as well, and jump straight back into the pits. 13.5 minutes left of qualifying as we jump on board with Ethan Funk here as well, as he's off round turn 13 on that run into 14. Pit lane entry on your left-hand side. You want to keep it to the close to the barrier as you possibly can round there. Not too close, mind you, because I have seen people hit the barrier, which was a very strange moment. I'm not going to lie, they over-rotated and basically tapped the barrier in 14. So 1:37.78 is his target time from Ethan Funk at the moment here as well. When we're talking about qualifying, we're talking about putting it on pole, and we talk about all the time, they're getting to the first corner first, getting out in front, staying out of trouble. Are we looking at a track in the Hungaroring where qualifying could be more important than it would be at normal other circuits? Because sometimes normal other circuits, Jake, you've got loads of time to overtake, you've got a nice wide circuit. Difficult circuit, Hungaroring. So are we saying pole for the likes of Corpi or Kirby is more important to them this time around, do we think?
I would say yes and no. And again, that comes down to the fact that we've got a depleted field, because yes, it's obviously very important to get as high a grid position as you possibly can at the Hungaroring, because overtaking is so difficult. But at the same time, with there being fewer cars on the grid to get held up by, you can be a little bit more fluid with the tactics, you can be a little bit more fluid with the strategy. So it might not actually be as big an impediment as it would be in a full field. So actually, a few of the absences might actually come back to help the likes of Dahlgren, Ujan, Walter de Bruin, who are a little bit further down the order than they would like to be at the present moment. They've still got time to turn that around, of course, but it could actually help them out on a day when you won't have as much traffic to deal with. And that's the difficulty around the Hungaroring. If you've got more traffic, then yes, your starting grid position is pretty crucial. On a day when you've got less cars to zip around, it isn't as big a problem as it usually is. So it could be a bit of a difficulty but it could also be a bit of an open game for some of those drivers to miss out on the top 5. It isn't over yet. And of course, let's not forget that with the VWSC being as competitive and as tough as it is, you see a lot of drivers get it right in qualifying and then get it wrong in the race itself. There are some who are very good over one lap, just dialing in the pace. But a lot of drivers, like myself, they don't really come up with their best goods until the race itself starts. Putting it all together for one lap is a lot harder than reading the drivers around you and then reacting to how they drive. Some drivers just don't quite fit the same motif. Now here is Risto Korpi, who has just gone past the ball in the first sector. So this is going to be a potential improvement on a 1:37.7, and he does need it because Kirby is only a quarter of a second back. Reasonable in the second split. Not quite enough to really write home about unless he's able to string something very smooth indeed together in the third sector. But Dan Kirby in that CMS Pro panels is not far away in the sectors either. He's just done a 34.5 for the first sector, so he's not quite as able to get the car planted in the first sector of the lap. And as Korpi comes over the line, this could be an improvement on a 1:37.7, but I think that middle sector really hampered him. Indeed it did. So Korpi unable to really make an improvement.
Yeah, no improvement there for him. What is Kirby going to be able to do? He's yellow in sector 1. He is purple in the second sector as he's coming around now through turn 14, locking up that inside line in that Panos here, GTR1. Is he going to be able to make it over the line beforehand? Is he going to be able to get that pole position away from Risto Korpi? Currently, at the moment, it was close. And
He has
1:37.73. So a stellar lap from Kirby, 0.045 there. A stellar job from Dan Kirby, who's looked strong all season. To be honest, him and Magnus Dahlgren, Jake, have been obviously swapping back the victories. Dahlgren's got 3, Kirby's got 2, the Bruin has got 1 as well. But honestly, it looks like we could be in for a nice little battle here between Kirby, Corby, Funk and Dahlgren all at the same time. And I think this could really lend itself to some great racing as we come into the last 8 minutes of quali.
Not even by 0.5 of a second has Kirby found the pace on Korpi, so very impressive stuff as we now look at Magnus Dahlgren in his Toyota GT1. It's also pretty close actually for the GT1 pole position. Oliver Day is very quick, but not that far in front of Becky Ely, who herself is only 0.08 of a second off the pace of Alex Gerrick in the Nissan. So Becky Ely with a chance to get back into pole position, and don't forget she leads the GT1 category. Magnus Dahlgren finding all of the runoff area on the exit of 3 as he absolutely stretches the limit, and he has gone fastest of all in the first sector, but that is a big wobble in the second sector for Magnus. So that, oh, look at that, a big twitch, and that's really going to hamper the balance and the rhythm of this second sector. This comes back to what we were talking about earlier on. This circuit is all about rhythm, and look, he's bailed out of it. He knows that it's not going to be a quicker lap. It's all about rhythm, this place. It's not about speed. It's not about pure pace. It's about knitting corner after corner after corner together. You really have to have that smooth, fluid pace all the way around the course of the lap. Here's Oliver Day in his Ferrari 33SP. And obviously he wants to try and get himself up to the top spot where possible. 2.1 seconds off the pace of Dan Kirby, but that is irrelevant as far as he's concerned because he's battling for the GT1 AM pole position, getting a lot of curb on the exit of turn 4. And again, this is where just getting these corners one after the other knitted together, that's where it becomes a real tricky moment for all of the drivers. That's where they're trying to find that little bit of even pace. And it's not easy to establish a smooth rhythm around this circuit. You've got to be so patient, but you've also got to have metronomic focus because you don't really get a lot of time to play with. Even the main straight, the longest part of the course, is not that long in the grand scheme of things. So you don't have a lot of opportunities. Now, Day has gone purple in the second sector. So this is obviously going to be a much better opportunity for him to extend that gap over Becky Ely. So let's see if the Ferrari can actually tidy up the lap. It's a good smooth radius. If it looks slow around here, it's probably pretty quick, although he has just kicked out over the curbs on the penultimate turn. Let's keep it nice and smooth. Get on the throttle. A little bit too much curb on the exit, so this is going to be close. 1:39.923. It is an improvement, not by much though. And there is Becky Ely in her Golf Racing McLaren. This is where the long-tail McLaren F1 GTR could actually pick up a few pieces. Fastest of all in the first sector, personal best in the second, and a much tidier final sector, I have to say, from Becky Ely. As she gets back on the throttle, that's how it's supposed to work. Is this going to be the fastest time in the group? 1:39.706 it is. So Becky Ely has gone fastest in GT1 AM. That is a very good run indeed from Becky Ely.
Yeah, definitely a definitive stamp there from Becky Ely. P7 overall for everybody within that race as well. Stamping the authority is Becky, already taken 4 wins this season as well. So let's not forget, it's done an absolutely stellar one, and the last 7 rounds have been absolutely incredible for Becky Ely there. So I think we're going to be interesting to see how that AM battle turns out. It could be quite an interesting one with the likes of Ely, with the likes of Day all fighting it out for that top spot. You know, I think that's the thing with this series, Jake, is just its non-stop competitiveness through the LMGT1 AMs, through the GT1 pros as well. And then, of course, we've got Ross Smith and JT Tammy in the LMGT2s. But from that top set of drivers, you know, the Kirbys, the Corpys, the Funks, the Dahlgrens, the Elys, the Days, it's going to be tough for all of them. And they've just got to try and make sure that they survive on track. And that's one thing that Becky Ely does really well, and just be consistent and make sure she finishes every race.
You're absolutely right. Survival is a very big factor of the Hungaroring. These curbs really can spit the car out, and you've got to be so patient, so calm and smooth in order to make a good race strategy come together. All it takes is 2 or 3 poor laps, and any advantage that you may have had on fuel levels or tyre life, it just washes away, and you suddenly find yourself chasing your own tail, essentially. In the inset, we've obviously got a nice little battle brewing in the lower positions, but Dan Kirby and Risto Corpi are trading first sectors. Corpi now going purple in sector 1, trying to put the Ferrari 333 SP back into pole position again. There's an off just in front of them, I notice. So one of the drivers bailing out on the lap there. And we ride on board. That's going to be an issue in the race, isn't it? Risto Corpi's lap is ruined there in the second sector by traffic. Now, that's going to be interesting in the race itself. It's not going to be so big a problem in the race trim, I don't think, because you're only going to have 2 GT2 cars, and they're going to be getting out of the way fairly rapidly. But certainly, look at the washout from Risto Corpi as well. It's very important to note there that with the steering application, he's soaring away quite a lot. It's almost as if the car has too much acceleration for the grip available. So he's really struggling. Look, the car is just dancing its way out of control. He may as well be on wet tyres at the moment, because the car just doesn't seem to have the smoothness and the control and the traction that he needs to get the ultimate from this circuit and from this lap.
Yeah, I think for Risto Corpi might be having a rethink and seeing what he's able to tweak and what he can deal with within that car there as well. Daniel Kirby also out on track at the moment. No improvements in Sector 1. Let's see how he gets on in Sector 2 and whether or not there's going to be an improvement on his time. And he's off the side of the circuit, so that would be just a flat no there as well. And it's a tough one, because you should say this is a fast, it's a flowing track. They've got to get it right as well. One simple slip up like that from Kirby can cost him as well. And you see Magnus Dahlgren is at purple in Sector 1 at the moment here, and let's see how he gets on for the rest of this lap to see if he is improving. We've just gone up through 6 and 7 on that run down into turn 8 now. Then we've got the right hander of 9 for Magnus Dahlgren. He locks it up. He's looking nice and smooth through there as he starts going off through the left hander of 10 into 11. We go, and Magnus Dahlgren here is looking like he's on for a fast one. It's a green in Sector 2 as well. So what about the final sector? Can he get it right? Now, bit of a wobble coming out of turn 12. Keeping the inside line of 13, just letting it drift out a little bit. Start using all of the track available to you, and now you've got to lock it up in tight as well. Keep it right in, and on to the acceleration we go. It goes across the line. What is Dahlgren going to be able to do here? Is it going to be an improvement? 1:38.292. It is an improvement for him. Not quicker as Dan Kirby or Risto Corpi there, Jake, but a great effort from Dahlgren nonetheless.
And much smoother as well. You could see a big change in his driving stance there. There was no more squirrely. You know, the back end wasn't kicking out, the car wasn't washing away in certain apexes. He was a lot smoother, a lot more consistent on the throttle. Oh, we've had a spinner at turn 1 there. One of the Panoses from CMS Pro went around. I wonder if that was Dan Kirby on a flying lap, just getting it away. So certainly one of the Panoses had a problem there. I noted that it isn't actually Dan Kirby, because Kirby has managed to come out of the final sector to start a flying lap.
Ooh.
In fact, there is Dan Kirby, who's going to cross the line to start his flying lap in the inset on the right-hand side of your screen with just a couple of seconds to spare. It's now or never, and Risto Corpi knows it as he's gone purple in Sector 1. Caution in the chicane. Do not push the throttle too hard. That's when the back end wants to step out. Got to be smooth, got to be fluid. Ferrari looks pretty controlled through the second sector. It's got to be balanced. The back end can come around a little bit, but you've got to make sure there's plenty of turning. This is much better from Risto Corpi. He seems to be waiting until the last moment. Personal best in second sector. It's not session best, but he can build on this through the third sector. Just be careful that you're not soaring away the wheel too much. You don't want those tires to start screaming on you. Careful, careful, careful. Pace is very important on that throttle. It's got to be gradual. You can't just stab it and hope that the traction is going to be enough. This is much smoother from Corpi, but he's got to be a little bit more aggressive on the throttle. That's it. Coming off the turn, it's nice and clean as a whistle. Is this going to be enough to get him through to the top end? No, he does not improve in the end. It was the third sector that really cost him dear. So Dan Kirby doesn't even need to have this perfect lap, but he has gone quickest of all in the first sector anyway, just to stamp his authority on it. He may well have heard that Risto Corpi has bailed on the lap or has not gone quicker. He's only 0.004 of a second off a good lap time in the second sector. And it's not his personal best for that second sector either. So for Dan Kirby, he doesn't even need to finish this lap off, because neither Dahlgren nor Cruz Gomez are going to be particularly strong. In fact, he has bailed out of it now. He doesn't need to finish the lap. So it is Dan Kirby that gets the pole position from Risto Corpi in front of Magnus Dahlgren. And then Ethan Funk in front of John Uyan. Pedro Cruz Gomez has done a very good job there to be in that top 6 as well. Becky Ely is 8th overall and manages to come through for pole position in the category in front of Alex Gorecki and Oliver Day. So let's go through, having had a fabulous run in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship here at the Hungaroring, the VWSC Historics, based on the 1998 Sports Car GT1 season. And it is Dan Kirby in the CMS Pro Panos that gets the pole position. If you've only just joined us, good timing, because myself, Jake Sanson, and my colleague James Parfitt are getting ourselves ready for the 250 kilometers of the Hungaroring here in Budapest in Hungary. Dan Kirby and Risto Corpi, they'll be on the front row with Panos ahead of Ferrari, then Toyota in front of Porsche. And that's 4 different manufacturers in the top 4. Make it 5, and you've got Ethan Funk in the Depth Racing Nissan there. Then John Uyan in the CMS Pro Panos in front of Wouter de Bruin in the Rookie Monsters Mercedes-Benz. Becky Ely is the fastest of the AM drivers in the Golf Racing McLaren. Alex Gorecki in the Nissan R390 in front of Oliver Day, the second of the AM drivers in his Ferrari 333 SP to round out the top 10. And then, of course, we have the drivers that will be chasing them down into the second foray of drivers. Only 2 GT2 drivers to worry about in the course of the race, which means that traffic isn't going to be a massive hindrance. Timon Suvic, though, in the Toyota GT1, ahead of Jason Whitehead in the Nissan R390. George Angelidis in the Scuderia Cavalli Ferrari, and then Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers Mercedes-Benz. Philippe Enrique in his Toyota GT1, ahead of the Speed Details Mercedes of Wayne Hutchison. Then the Golf Racing McLaren, the second car of Gilles Villeneuve, in front of the Speed Details Mercedes of Stephen Miller. And then we have Gilles Lalonde in the Panos. In front of the leading GT2, that is the Rookie Monsters Marcos of Ross Smith with that fabulous Chevrolet engine. And Ross Smith is obviously the one of only 2 GT2 competitors in the field this time, a depleted field for various different degrees of reason. But Ross Smith will be there battling away for the GT2 honours, starting as he is from 20th on the grid with JT Tammy in the Support Ukraine Saline Mustang from 21st on the grid. And they are about 10 seconds a lap away from the pace of the leading cars, which means it's probably going to be, with only 2 GT2 cars to worry about, I estimate it's going to be about lap 13 until those cars are actually being caught by the race leaders. So there's going to be quite a lot of wheel-to-wheel stuff in the early stages, even compared to what we usually see, James, because there's not as many GT2 cars to hold each other up and fall back into the clutches of the leaders. With only 2, that means that the leaders are actually going to have to work very hard to catch up to the GT2s on this occasion.
Yeah, and with the likes of Smith and Tammy in that GT2s as well, then I just say they're not as quick, but at the end of the day, they will put in some quick laps for their class. And I think at the end of the day, for the likes of Ross Smith and JT Tammy, it's really got to be just about being able to finish at 75%. They've got to get through 75% before they start scoring points. So they've got to get 75% of the race distance. For the LMGT1s, as you say, it's going to be 13 laps. Now, by that point, we would expect the likes of Kirby, Corpy, and Dahlgren to be running away a little bit over Funk, Uyan, and Wouter de Bruin. Becky Ely will be also in and thereabouts. She is quick, but probably not as quick as Kirby. So I don't think traffic with the GT2s the LMGT2, should be too much of an issue. I think if JT Tammy and Smith are spread out anyway, they're not going to be fighting in general. And I think that's one of the things here as well, is what's JT Tammy and Ross Smith going to do? Are they going to be fighting? Probably, but they're probably realizing that, it's more important for both of us to finish than none of us to finish. So they probably will be fighting, but not as hard as they normally are. Well, there you go. We've got Ross into the booth. Ross, let's just pick up first off. What is the strategy for the race? Are you going to be fighting with JT Tammy as hard as what we're presuming you might be?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition on how hard that is. Obviously, like you said, you had a really good point. I mean, you want to make it to the end before you start having aspirations for banging out a win. But we're going to take it easy. Tuesday showed us that being cautious and taking care of the car, taking care of the tires, especially with this heat, is going to be number one. And you just have to stay focused as hard as you can there. This track is really bumpy. I'm not sure how much you can see some of the undulations and stuff that are happening on the road surface, but it's it really takes a lot of concentration, more than I certainly thought coming into it. So it's a tough one, and we're gonna have cars swimming around us, and it's going to make things interesting for our own battle here. He doesn't have as much experience on this coming from just jumping in as he does, but he's also very good. So I think it'll make things interesting in that class, and certainly on the top class, there's a lot that's going on between those cars, as you guys are seeing. It's going to be tire management. That's going to be number one today. Just how much they can hold on to those tires for a stint. I don't think anyone's going to be able to double stint unless you're talking a splash and dash at the end. It's just impossible with how hot it is.
So are we looking at least a minimum of 2 pit stops then?
Yeah, across the board for sure. I'm not sure how much on top of that's going to be necessary. I know that they're catching GT2 traffic in about 8 laps or so, and I mean obviously they have the 64 to do themselves and whatever lap traffic comes about. But yeah, it's going to come down to just what people can do. We actually saw somebody on Tuesday night for MNRL. They actually triple stinted their tires somehow. I don't know how they pulled that off, but it managed to keep them out there, and they made it work for their particular class and category. But I don't know that that's going to be the norm.
Okay, well, there we go. Let's pick up on certain things that's working in the background at the moment, Ross. What is the situation in conjunction with the VWSC and the mods that's taking place at the moment? Just how far along are you from when we spoke to you last time about it all as well? What's the development? What's in development? Are we going to see improvements? I know you're probably not going to tell me what historic series you're going to do next season, but
No.
What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to disappoint you and Jake here a little bit with that. Yeah, we've been working really hard behind the scenes. Most of the development since the last time we talked has been actually getting cars ready for both the historic and the modern series for next year. The new cars. Obviously, the modern one, you're going to see a lot of carry forward from the cars that are established there. A lot of them will be getting a facelift, so some of them didn't have like the Evo kits applied, and we're going to be working on that in a lot of cases. And of course, they're going to have 3 new GTs and 3 new hypercars that are going to enter the field. I'm sure you can probably guess which ones. Yeah. But yeah, so that'll be good. Yeah. But there's just a ton of development there, and I mean, I can tell you that personally from the graphics side, I'm just spending a lot of time developing, getting the cars to look the way they need to, both inside and out, getting the cameras and everything ready, so that way you guys have a really nice suite of views to work from as you're doing commentary and broadcasting, and it's going to be great. Yeah, we're really excited for all of it coming forward.
Yeah,
but with the historic stuff. Let's cut to the chase here. Let's cut to the chase here. Am I going to need to dress up like Christian Bale, or am I going to need to dress up like Steve McQueen? Come on, level with me here. It's how far back are we going, roughly, ish?
You know, you could probably dress as either, and you wouldn't be too out of character.
Very nice. That'll do.
So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. Right now we have 9 cars slated. I kind of go into more details if we had some of them nailed down, but we're still in the process of securing different models and making decisions on how we're going to divvy up the multi-class on the historic side. So there's still a little bit of undulation there before I can say, hey, we're done waffling now. Here's kind of some more detail to whet your palate.
Well, there's a very good chance that you may lose a commentator and get a race driver next year if it's going to be the right period, because that's sounding very, very tempting for me. This kind of a race, Ross, I mean, obviously you're going to have a very interesting time out there to a certain extent, because obviously it's going to be just yourself and JT Tammy. But having said that, I guess from a racing driver's point of view, what might be quite nice is to have a race circuit to play with, to really learn about what the car is doing, improve your stance as a driver without having to worry too much about flotsam and jetsam.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, we're both going to have a little bit more casual time in the in sort of the episodes in between traffic management, but we are going to be pretty competitive. I mean, I would say JT's probably got more pace than me overall. I'm just hoping that some of my experience up to date is going to help me out a little bit. He's really quick. It'll be fun regardless, trying to just make sure I'm chasing him down, keeping him close, and see how things shake out by the end.
Fantastic. Well, that's all my questions answered, James. Nice and easy. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how that plays out, to be fair.
Yeah, I think even with the 2 there, Ross, as well, you've still got to be looking at just staying with JT, haven't you? And trying to just stay with him in general. You don't want a kind of a whole race where you're just driving around on your own.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that you can still do things even if we break away from each other, because like I said, tire management is going to be huge here, and even fighting with Adrian Rice on Tuesday night, he wasn't going to show up to Saturday races yet, just because just because he's got stuff going on that's going to keep him from really getting too dug in there. But we had a really good race, even when he managed to pull away. I had a slight moment, and even then, he was finding that as he was pushing the tires and kind of trying to work out the car, I was able to kind of close him down, and it just made for some really interesting moments throughout the entire thing. So I'm hoping that kind of thing happens here today, if we're not just nose to tail for a good chunk of it.
Well, it's going to be definitely an interesting one with you there, Ross. Thank you so much for joining us there, bud. We are in the warm-up. We'll let you get back and get some laps on and see how you get on here as well. But once again, Mr. Ross Smith, thank you very much for joining us here as well.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Jake, and JPP for everything you guys are doing. We really look forward to working with you guys through the end of the season and into next year.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you very much, Ross, and good luck in the race.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll be talking to you guys at the end. There's a 50-50 chance.
Well, literally.
Indeed there is.
Take care, mate.
All right, guys. Yeah.
Well, there you go, Jake. I still can't tease Ross in giving me any more information regarding the historic. You know, you've got a rough date, but what do you think? He's keeping his cards close to his chest at the moment.
I've got plenty of information from that to work with. That'll do me absolutely fine. It's the right decade for me. It's the right period of sports car racing for me. I think it's really quite satisfying. When you consider what we've done with historics in the past, you know, over the last couple of seasons, we've done Group C, arguably the most sensational era of Le Mans in history. At the moment, dabbling with these beautiful little GTs, which was my sort of birth into my love of sports car racing at all. The 1997 sports car season was actually the first I ever watched. So for me, very exciting. And then to think about, you know, me being a motor racing historian as much as I am, you know, a lot of people's knowledge only goes back as far as, you know, they've been watching in terms of motor racing. But as a pure lover of the sport and a pure eclectic, my motor racing knowledge these days really does go all the way back to 1894. So to kind of look all the way through these different classes and these different competitions of racing, and to know that VWSC is going to go even further back to sort of shine a light on even further halcyon days of the competition, for me, it really does get my juices flowing. I'm really excited for next year. It'll be a very exciting competition. It'll definitely be one worth talking about. And the driving standards for those cars, if we think it's the right period we think it is, are going to need to be up-tempo. They're going to need to be, you know, very respectful, very, very sporting, which is exactly what we get to see in VWSC week in, week out. So you couldn't really have asked for a better period of sports car racing to use for the historics in 2024 with the there isn't a more perfect community of esports racers to give those cars to. It really is going to be a sensational battle. The problems and the incidents that we do have are never usually down to intent at all. It's down to, you know, difficulties and accidents. It's just one of those things. You certainly never get, you know, stupid driving in VWSC, which is one of the reasons I subscribe to it and I'm here, because the standards are always really good. The community is really, really chatty and amiable and friendly, and the banter is genuine. You know, the camaraderie is real. So to give them cars that people will absolutely fall in love with, it couldn't really have happened to a better community of esports.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that kind of shines them above other leagues that, you know, as I say, we probably both commentated on during this esports scene as well, that's just gone kind of boom since the whole COVID lockdown situation. Everybody stayed at home. They got involved with multiple sims, whether it's R Factor, iRacing, ACC, Race Room, set it up, got a steering wheel, clamped it to the desk, and away they went. And it's from there that births of series grow and are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And there's so many different communities you can join, but for an R Factor 2 series, if you want to race the modern sports cars, if you want to do the historic series, there's no better than the VWSC. I think the work that goes on in the background with Storm Gang Simulation is just absolutely incredible. And the amount of effort they put in, I think for us to commentate on is a pleasure for us, because we get to see these amazing cars, we get to see all the efforts, we speak to Ross and George and the amount of work that they're doing. And I think that these guys should be definitely proud of what they've done over this period of time, because the VWSC, there's no better in R Factor 2.
So true, James. So true. I mean, you know, I'm in a very privileged position to be working in motor racing full time, both in the real world of motorsports commentary and esports. And when you've got such a busy schedule, esports is tough to put in your calendar, especially when you're traveling around a lot. And I think it tells quite a lot that there's only two forms of esports that I now dedicate my time to on a regular basis. One is the Retro Racing Managers League, which is, you know, very much a managers league based around Grand Prix 2, that vintage, beautiful game from Microprose. The other is this, you know, and that's, you know, that's all I have patience for, really. And that the reason for that, it comes down to the people, it comes down to the standard of driving, it comes down to the quality of the machinery, it comes down to the aesthetics, the code of the conduct of the esports races, and how competitive it is. You know, it's not just one or two drivers that disappear off into the distance. You do get half a dozen to a dozen drivers in both categories on a regular basis who can win races, who can compete at the front level, who can get things done. And for me, you know, that's where the enjoyment factor comes. That's where the excitement factor of esports racing really comes from. You don't want one or two drivers who can spend, you know, an insane amount of time on the rigs, perfecting it, and then disappearing for the rest of the fray. You want a championship where you all get the same level of competition, you get the same level of ability, you get a very equal playing field, and it's very hard to find that outside of VWSC. So it's a very wonderful community, and certainly the racing here today. On a track like the Hungaroring, even with a depleted field, you're going to see some really exciting battles, particularly I think in the GT1 AM category. There's still, for me, 4 drivers that can win this race. In the main category, I reckon you've got half a dozen who could do it, all the way down to Wood to the Bruin from the poleman Dan Kirby. All you've got to do, essentially, to be in with a fight for the victory, is keep a steady metronomic pace in the early phase, try not to get too het up in the traffic when it does approach, and be smooth. In this particular circuit, in this particular race, smooth is the only way to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be the challenge for everyone. You know, the likes, I think, to be fair, the likes of Smith, the likes of JT Tammy, they're going to have quite a tough job, because at the end of the day, they are only racing each other. That's it. You know, if JT Tammy goes off, for Ross Smith, he's just driving around on his own for the rest of the race, and he's got to try and keep that concentration level. For the likes of Kirby, for the likes of Corpy, Uyon, Dolgren at the front of the LMGT1s, they've got to do a little bit more, because at the end of the day, they've got a bigger field to deal with. They've got multiple fast drivers. They've got multiple things to take into consideration running up in that faster series. It's going to be a battle of who can concentrate, who can get the flow right round here. You mentioned it before as well, the flow of the track. You've got to get into that groove. There isn't time for you to sit back and think what I can do for shopping, or what am I going to do after this. And trust me, I'm guilty of it myself, Jake. I've sat there at times and I made a horrible mistake because I was thinking about what I was going to have for dinner. You know, and that's why I don't drive in series, to be honest, because, well, one, I'm just not very good, and B, my attention span's not as, you know, about as much as a goldfish.
I do know what you mean. The last time I was in a competitive esports race, I was quoting Blackadder to myself, and it completely threw me off and into the wall.
Yeah,
so I do know exactly. It is easy to get distracted.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, you start thinking about things, or, you know, I'm quite lucky at the moment. I've stuck a door on the office now as well, and built a wall. So normally I'd have the kids running around me, or something, or the wife popping in going, do you want a coffee? Or, you know, something along those lines. And all these things go wrong while I'm trying to drive. The people who drive and type at the same time just completely amaze me, to be honest. But this is the battles that these guys are going to deal with. Kirby, Funk, Corpy, Uyon, Dolgren, and everybody else who's going to be running at the front of the field, they've got to be on it for the entire race. And if they're not, it could go horribly wrong. And I think these guys have just got to be a little bit sensible there as well. We have just finished the warm-up. We will be looking once more to get this race underway here, Jake. Who do you think then, Jake, at the LMGT1s? Who's going to win?
It's very tricky. I've got a feeling that the prototypes, the sort of the Ferrari 33SP, the Toyotas, are actually really going to struggle to keep their tire temperature to a reasonable expectation. I actually think you're going to find it easier if you're in a Panoz, if you're in a Porsche, if you're in a Mercedes, maybe if you're in an R390. I think that's kind of going to be the best of both worlds with that particular car. I've just got a feeling that the slightly shorter wheelbase of cars are going to find it a little bit easier to keep tire temperature over the course of a stint. Maybe we'll get to see some good one-lap pace on the opening laps of the stint from your Toyota, from your Ferrari. However, whether you can sustain that over the course of an entire stint, that's going to be the really interesting challenge. I've just got a feeling that on a circuit like the Hungaroring, where it's not about top-end speed, it's about mechanical grip, you've got a slightly better chance of keeping the tyres more focused, more sustainable over the entire stint if you're in a slightly shorter wheelbase car, if you're in a slightly narrower construction of car. So I think it will be trickier for the Toyotas, the Nissans, and the Ferraris to sort of maintain that. However, we've been wrong before. It'll be very fascinating to see how it all goes. I think the composure of Becky Ely in that McLaren F1 is definitely going to see her in good stead in the GT1 AM category. However, Oliver Day is not going to give her the chance to have any respite. So she's going to need to maintain that focus throughout the entirety of this 64 laps of the Hungaroring circuit. So it will be quite tricky. It will be very, very tricky to balance. But I do think you're going to see quite a sporadic nature of stint, because obviously you're going to have the first couple of laps when you bed the tyres in. You're going to need to do that in a very smooth fashion. And when the tyres are cold, smooth is hard to maintain. It's hard to sort of keep on top of. So those first couple of in laps and those first couple of out laps in the first stint and a half or so, that could be where the race is won and lost. When you've got fewer drivers in the field to trip over, it's all going to come down to how you react, how you respond, how you deal with the pressure around you.
Okay. So here we go. Now as well, you can see the cars getting on to the grid, ready to go. We'll get back to Jake in a minute, because if you did see, he tactfully avoided giving me a name of who he thought was going to win there as well. But we'll get back to Jake in that one and put him more on the spot to stop him getting splinters in his bum when he's sitting on the fence at the moment here as well. He gave us a great explanation, but no real definitive driver. So we'll get back to that one, Jake. We'll get an answer out of you who you think's going to win.
Ask me halfway round lap 64.
No! Okay, guys, we will be back very, very shortly for the start of the race. Okay, guys, we are back. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Mr. Reese in YouTube chat and Carl's boys in YouTube chat as well, waving. Thank you so much. But here is the grid. Dan Kirby will be on for pole position with Risto Corpi in second. Magnus Dahlgren in third there, with Ethan Funk in fourth. John Uyan in fifth. Wouter De Bruin in sixth. Becky Ely seventh. And Alex Garrick is down in eighth place. Oliver Day in ninth there, with Timon Subic in 10th, Jason Whitehead in 11th, and George Angelidis will be in 12th on the grid. Brian Hall in 13th, Philip Enrique in 14th, Wayne Hutchinson will be in 15th, and Gilles Villeneuve in that Golf Racing McLaren in 16th. Stephen Miller in 17th, and Gilles Lalonde down in 18th place there. And then we go into the two LMGT2 AMs, Ross Smith and JT Tammy. Ross getting ahead of JT on this occasion. So only two cars there from that class on track, and we'll see how these guys get on once more, and whether or not they're going to have a nice little tidy battle, or if somebody's going to be running away with it there as well. But that is the grid. We do have 20 cars on track for us, and these guys are coming round into turn 12 now before we get the race underway. I'm James Barfield. I'm joined in the booth by Jake Sanson, Paul Glover on production here as well in the background. But get ready, guys. Grab your drinks, get your popcorn, sit back, as we've got 64 laps of the Hungaroring, and we are going to be underway very, very shortly. We're going round turn 14, the final corner here. Single file start, let's not forget. Dan Kirby is out in front. He's going to be doing a jump here as well, and I think he's going to go very, very shortly, because he's got to be sitting there waiting, and we are going to be up and running right about now, and it is Kirby right at the beginning here of the race, heading down into turn one. Corby managed to hang on to that second place there as well, with Dahlgren in third, Funk in fourth. In the bottom right hand corner, you can see the GT2 starting off there. Ross Smith has got in front of and opened up a gap over JT Tammy, not by much, mind you, but they are only the two cars in that class. Every clean start there, Jake. Everybody got away. Kirby did what he needed to do. He hung on, but he has got Corby about nearly half a second back already.
And Corby really struggled into that first corner. He almost went straight into the back of the panels under the braking zone for turn one. He really struggled to get the car stopped. So this is kind of coming back to what we were expecting, or at least I certainly was expecting. The Ferrari struggling to get the traction down on the first part of the race. Keeping an eye on the GT1 AM category, Ely has got a good start in front of Oliver Day, with Angelidis running a very solid third place in 12th position overall. I noticed that Gilles Lalonde is actually in pit road at the moment, so not quite sure what happened with Gilles Lalonde off the start, but certainly no major movements there from Lalonde, who's had a miserable race anyway, and it hasn't started well at all. So out in front, Kirby in front of Corpy, and then Dahlgren, Funk, De Bruyne, Uyan, Becky Ely in front of Adam Goreczka. And then we have Suvic there in 9th position, having made a good start actually, Timon Suvic, so worth keeping an eye on that Toyota. But as they come out of the final turn at the end of the first lap, Kirby looking good from Corpy and Dahlgren. Funk is trying to stay with them at the moment. A new best lap time from Kirby, getting through on a 1:41.618 to start the race off. But this is going to be a very interesting situation as the drivers are starting to bed in. Again, we said it before, this is all about rhythm, all about looking after tyres. Dahlgren seems to have had a bit of a decent run here to try and close up on Corpy as we watch Ethan Funk in the R390.
Yeah, Funk is trying to hang on to these front three there as well. However, Dahlgren, Corpy and Kirby, that has got... And Gilles Lalonde looks like he has had a moment on the circuit currently at the moment. We'll see if we can have a look back and see what happened to him here as well. Gilles Lalonde's just not had a good run. He's not had a good race. And let's see what he has been up to here as well on this replay. This was coming in. He's just come out of the pits there, I believe, as well. And he looks like he's just kind of hugged that inside line to get out of the way there. And well, I've never quite seen it be done like that before, Jake. I appreciate you wanting to get out of the way because you're coming out of the pits, but probably not best running over the grass.
There's keeping a wide berth, and then there's turning your panels into a rallycross machine. Unfortunately, that doesn't really give him anything to work with. And Magnus Dahlgren drops the Toyota off the curb there, and that's really going to hamper his opportunity to keep Risto Corpy at bay. But Corpy, again, the traction of that Ferrari is really not coming up to him at the moment. As we watch the duel a little further back, this is Becky Ely in the McLaren, trying to shake off Alex Goreczki, who is currently in 8th position overall. Timon Suvic is the car behind them, and then you've got the Ferrari of Oliver Day. So Becky Ely running a very solid race in the lead of GT1 AM, and looking pretty good at the moment as Kirby bangs in a 1:39.9 to really bed in that panels at the front end of the field, and it's looking pretty consolidatory at the moment from Kirby in the lead of the race. Corpy following into the clutches of Magnus Dahlgren, but Becky Ely doing what she does best, just consistent, metronomic pace, keeping that car on the racetrack. However, Dahlgren, look, he's really giving Risto Corpy the pressure now, and Corpy in 2nd position in that Ferrari, just trying to keep it nice and tidy, but Magnus Dahlgren absolutely spitting exhaust fumes at the moment, kicking up the dust as he goes over the curbs on the far side there at turn 3. But he really does want to come up with something special.
Yeah, he's got to try here for Dahlgren. He's got to have a go as they come around that long right-hand over 5. All the way around now. He's got to try and close that gap up. He's pulled it down a little bit. He's down to 1.9 now. When we were talking about Becky Ely here, Jake, as well, she's mixing up in the pros and the overalls, right? She's within that field at the moment. You know, what's the situation for Ely? Does she need to fight? She's got a 2.5 second gap over Day. Does she need to be scrapping with the pros, or is she just going to be sitting there thinking, no, you know, you go ahead with a different class here, because that thought's got to pop into her head. And at the end of the day, she's got to weigh up the pros and cons of fighting with the pros and really trying to concentrate and staying ahead of Day. But she doesn't want to put herself in the position where Day catches up to her. You know, he's only 2 seconds back now, 1.8. So he is closing.
Well, Becky Ely doesn't really have a lot to lose here, does she? She's already in a very strong and consolidatory position in the GT1 AM category, so she can just continue her pace and rhythm. She doesn't even have to challenge the 6 cars in front of her on the road. Just stay with them and just use them as a guiding point. It's all on Oliver Day, who wants to try and close up on Becky Ely in terms of the title fight in GT1 AM, but also to showcase his credentials. But this is a learning opportunity for Becky Ely. She's really kind of hunting down the pros, and you're just learning from the best. This is how you convert yourself from AM to pro. You sit in there, you do your time, you look through the learning procedures and the protocols, you figure out where to pick up your own pace, you look at what the other drivers are doing, and she'll get a real showcase there, sat in 7th position, as to how she can continue to improve her form. This is a great learning opportunity more than anything else for Becky Ely. For Ethan Funk, this is going to get frustrating after a while. We're watching him in 4th position. He's got Corpy and Dahlgren, who are slowly backing themselves up into the Nissan R390. And again, I kind of felt that at the start of the race, the R390 was going to have a bit of a difficulty on both counts, because it's a slightly longer wheelbase of car. But I think it's going to have slightly better mechanical grip over the course of things, as the GT1 Toyota again just drops it over the dust, over the curbs. And that's where the car is going to slow itself down. It's going to burn out the tyres a little bit more faster. And again, Dahlgren just drops it. Ethan Funk doesn't even need to make the overtake here on Dahlgren. He just needs to sit behind him and put pressure on him. That's the third corner in a row that Dahlgren has dropped the Toyota. He's under a lot of pressure here because he wanted to try and put a little bit more on Risto Korpi in terms of pressure, but he's actually now, look, backs to the wall to try and keep the R390 at bay. Ethan Funk is making him look very nervous. Backs against the rope line now at the moment for Ethan Funk as he pushes Dahlgren into mistakes.
Yeah, they are coming down the start, finish straight now. Dahlgren is a little bit raggedy, is a little bit all over the place at the moment. We are going to be having a look back here at a replay of JT Tammy coming around that left-hander at 4 and drops it, he goes, and off the side of the circuit. That is one thing we didn't want, as there is only 2 cars down in that class. We wanted them to be fighting together in the GT2s, and unfortunately for JT there, it's now a bit of a challenge to try and catch back up. But we have got Dahlgren, and we've still got Funk closing him down as well. Dahlgren again runs a little bit wide out of 4. What's he going to be able to do here from Funk's position? Is he going to be able to? He's got to be able to put him under pressure. Dahlgren's making mistakes, and he's got to, from Funk's side, just stay with him, Jake. He's just got to keep piling on the pressure, keep taking the corners, keep making Funk run wide, Dahlgren run wide, because sooner or later, Dahlgren's going to run exceptionally wide, and Funk's going to be able to take the position. As you said, currently, he doesn't need to make the overtake.
Yeah, he doesn't. It's a very tight and twisty circuit, this. They call this Monaco without the walls. So all he has to do is essentially just keep himself underneath that rear wing of Magnus Dahlgren. Ethan Funk has all the cards up his sleeve here. He just needs to sit in behind him and let Dahlgren do all the hard work. And obviously with that car having already dropped it a few times in the previous lap and a half, he's not going to find it terribly easy to gain on the R390. We've got another replay here. We saw JT Tammy going off at turn 4 earlier. This is one of the Ferraris overshooting and getting it very squirrely, just tripping across the curbs. So easily done once you start to lock the brakes and the car drifts aside. So very easily done. Just coming back to JT Tammy's incident, as it was Pedro Cruz Gomez in the Scuderia Cavalli Ferrari that overshot the chicane. Just coming back to JT Tammy losing the car there at turn 4. That's such an easy mistake to make as well, because you're turning into turn 4, you realise you've got the trajectory just a little bit too early, and you try and correct it, but the car is already committed to turning in at that point. So the shifting gravitational pull as Cruz Gomez spits the car out, manages to get it going again, but fortunately without losing a position, although that could happen over the next couple of corners. But JT Tammy losing that car the way he did, once the car's already committed to turning in and you try and correct it, that shift in the centre of gravity just kicks the car out to the right. So easily done. He's now got 7 seconds to make up on Ross Smith. There's Brian Hall there in the Hall Brothers Mercedes, just trying to stay with the cars in front at the moment, obviously trying his best to keep it afloat. You can see here in the midfield the drivers just trying their best to get into a bit of a rhythm, but these Ferraris and Toyotas are really finding it tough to do that. Here's John Uyan, who's actually got pressure from Becky Ely. This is great to see the McLaren actually throwing above the GT1 AM weight and really starting to put pressure on not just any ordinary racing driver, but this is Becky Ely keeping pace with the likes of Wouter de Bruin and John Uyan. She's not keeping up with also Rand, she's keeping up with some of the best in the category.
Yeah, doing an absolutely stellar job. Here's Becky Ely here, mixing it in with Uran, with De Bruin there, and there is a bit of a train developing. You can see there as well, 2, 4, 6 cars all involved once more as we go back to a replay here, and we'll have a look and see what happened. Oh! Villeneuve and Miller having a coming together there. That's going round turn 5. Probably not the best way of taking that corner, missing your braking points, and Villeneuve goes off again. Is he going to hit the wall? He's not. He saved it on the grass, and Gilles Villeneuve is back up and running in that Golf Racer McLaren F1 there as well. And we've now got Gomez, who looks like he has DNF. Jake, let's see what has happened to him here once more. Oh, coming around the turn, I believe that's turn 13. There it is. Into the wall, into the wall and the barriers. So unfortunately, Gomez, a first casualty of the race at the moment.
It was so easily done as well, and once you start making those mistakes, once you start locking the back wheels the way that Pedro Cruz Gomez did into the first corner, it just breeds those issues. Is that Becky Ely about to lose out there to Timon Suvic? Suvic gets through, and there as well goes the Nissan R390. So that's pure opportunism from the two drivers mixing it there. Suvic bashing wheel to wheel and actually locking wheels as they come through. Becky Ely's just got to be careful here. Just got to sit behind them and let it happen. Don't get too close up as they both spin off. Beautiful avoidance from Becky Ely. Just absolutely in the right place at the right time. Backed herself off a couple of car lengths, let the two drivers hit each other, and just coasted the car around on the outside. Let's look again. Suvic getting the determined lock there on the inside line. But look, you've got Nissan versus Toyota. Watch Becky Ely in the McLaren. She's not going to give way to the Nissan that's behind her. But watch, Becky Ely's in a rock and a hard place here. We're going to see them as they both drift off. Look, Suvic's drifted into the Nissan. The Nissan's come back on the course alongside Suvic. Clouted him. That was almost Steve Soper and John Cleland in British touring cars, the way they kind of took each other out there. But fabulous reactions from Becky Ely. She kind of knew it was coming, and as a result, she kept herself and the McLaren wide enough that she could deal with it if it was going to cause a problem on the inside. But she didn't panic. She didn't roll on the brakes. She didn't edge the car on throttle. She just let the car coast and has actually given herself a real break as a result of that. Big mistake, though, from Suvic and Goretzka. They really hampered themselves there, just getting a little bit too hungry, a little bit too early into the race. That was beautiful reactions from Becky Ely.
Was there space, though? That's the thing, isn't it? Was he given space to be able to come back on track there from Suvic in that Toyota, Joe? Because we talk about it as well. We can clearly see that Goretzka's gone off the side of the circuit. Did he give him the room to come back on? No. Or did Suvic say, well, you're out there now, son, kind of stay there? Because that probably could have caused a contact in general if Goretzka didn't have room to come back onto the track.
It's a really good point, and that all started because Timon Suvic essentially lost the car in the left-hand apex. He drifted mid-apex into the path of Goretzka, so it wasn't intentional to force him wide at all. But once Goretzka went off the road, Suvic essentially, I think you may have a point, he may have just said, well, you went off the road, so I may as well just hold my line. And Goretzka, obviously feeling hard done by, he may have felt that, you know, essentially he's been drifted into. You could see it wasn't intentional, though, initially, from Suvic. You could see that the car was getting loose mid-apex, so he wasn't intentionally trying to squeeze him. It was because the back end of the car wouldn't rotate, it wouldn't turn in, so he ended up basically cannoning into the side of Goretzka's car. We're going to have another replay. Is it of a different incident? It is, and it's Becky Ely avoiding a wayward Mercedes. So that was a bit of a sluggish moment there. That's the... Now, which Mercedes is that one? That's going to be... It is Wouter, isn't it? It's Wouter de Bruin, who has spun just in front of Becky Ely. So, again, you know, that's a big name making a mistake. And the calm, composed nature of some of these drivers out there really belying the experience that some of them have. So, really good to see. Now we go back to Ethan Funk. I've been waiting for this particular battle to build and build throughout. We're already on lap 10, and Dahlgren is, I'm sure, going to be spending about as much time on his rearview mirror as he is on the road in front, because Ethan Funk is just waiting for him to make a mistake of it.
Yeah, he's got to try. We've seen Dahlgren do it. We've seen him make a couple of mistakes going down into... He had a collection of free corners at the same time. And we've lost Villeneuve. He's at DNF as well from the LMGT1 AMS. He did hit the wall in 13 and may have just decided enough is enough. So we've lost Gilles Villeneuve here as well. But we have got Ethan Funk in that R390. We have got Dahlgren in the GT1 Toyota. So here we go now. Can Ethan Funk get him down into the start-finish straight? I think he's going to be too far back this time around. And from Funk's situation, he's just got to keep putting pressure on Dahlgren. He's got to keep trying to get that mistake out of him, Jake. He's got to just keep pressurizing him. He's got to sit under the wing, see where it's faster. He's got to map him out. And that's the thing whenever you're following somebody in front of you, is you've got to map out the way that they're driving. Okay, so I'm faster here. He's quicker there if I can stay with him here. And you saw Dahlgren make the mistake out of turn 2. And now Ethan Funk is tucked up right behind him as they come round 4 now. Avoiding out as well on the right-hand side. Dahlgren makes another mistake. That's going to allow Funk to pressurize him back in round turn 5. Funk's looking for the run. He's not going to get him out of 6 and 7 chicane here, Jake. But Ethan Funk is definitely closing in, ready to pounce.
this is the moment. He knows he's got to try and take advantage of Dahlgren getting a little bit sideways in these apexes. He'll find his opportunity if he's just a little bit more patient. He's got to stay right with him. He can't go for the move because around this circuit, you don't get many opportunities to stick your nose out and hope it's going to stick. Essentially, he's got to be all over the back of Dahlgren. He cannot be the offense here. He's got to be the tactician. He needs to just sit behind Dahlgren, wait for him to lose the car. And that's how we've seen a lot of opportunities come the way of other drivers. That's how Becky Ely got around the incident between Suvik and Goretzka. He just has to be so patient here, Ethan Funk, just allowing Magnus Dahlgren to be the one to get into hot water through the final hairpin. Again, the car wants to drift out. This is good from Funk. This is exactly what he needs to do. He doesn't need to make the overtake. He just needs to give Dahlgren plenty to think about. If he doesn't get through him in the next couple of laps, he's then got to start thinking about his time management. He's got to start thinking about, right, when do I make the pit stop to leapfrog him? Because he's still got to have that moment of cautious realization. Now, there we go. It's lap 12, and leaders have now caught up to JT Tammy. So this is where it could get interesting. Magnus Dahlgren, again, has got to be a little bit careful. He's got to be a little conservative in getting around the Mustang. But at the same time, this is Ethan Funk's opportunity, and he knows it. So Funk is going to have a possible chance here as Dahlgren drifts out wide. They kick out behind JT Tammy in the Mustang. And that's exactly what Dahlgren wanted. Look at that. He's been able to give himself a tiny bit of breathing space over Ethan Funk. He drifts wide, though, so that little bit of an advantage he gained has actually already been negated. I reckon the Toyota's tyres are almost done on this particular stint. Ethan Funk just needs to keep the Nissan as close to the rear spoiler as possible with a chance to creep up in front. What could be a little bit of an opportunity, again, is that they're closing up now on Ross Smith in the Marcos, the leader in GT2. So if they, again, just keep their wits about them, this could be an opportunity for Funk to get clear into third position. He might want to do it before the stint, but if he keeps the car's tyres in a good state, that's where he's going to get his chance. Dahlgren again runs wide. He lets Dahlgren think he's going to go for the move there, Ethan Funk, but he didn't go for it. He just wanted to keep himself in a steady position. He's got to think about the long game here as well as the short game. Yes, overtaking Dahlgren would be fantastic, but he's got to focus on the tyre temperatures. He's got to focus on the lifespan of those tyres. He needs to get to his pit stop. This is where Dahlgren's going to get a little bit impeded. Funk can carry the throttle a little bit earlier, and now the opportunity might come. Funk is going to follow in the wheel tracks of the Marcos. They head by nice and early, but look, Dahlgren has already got rid of that advantage from Funk. He was very deliberate in how he got around the Marcos. This is great between the two of them. They're trading sectors and trading apexes every time they go through, as Brian Hall now makes his move on De Bruin and loses it right in front of De Bruin.
Oh, Brian Hall! Too many beans there. Hit the curb on the outside, spun the car across at root of De Bruin there as well. You can watch it on the left-hand side of his car, or on the right-hand side as you're looking at the screen. You'll see him come out. There's the curb. He put the gas down. There's Wout De Bruin in the black there as well, and unfortunately for Brian Hall, it was just a one-way ticket across the side of the circuit. So easily done there, and Brian Hall is now into the pit. So Wout De Bruin did manage to carry on, so that's great from him. Funk and Dahlgren, the only thing I did notice about Dahlgren, when they were coming past JT Tammy, when they were coming past Ross Smith, is Dahlgren looked like he rushed that move past Tammy into turn 4 to try and get that gap on in front of Funk. The only problem is, as you can see, he's doing that continuously. He's opening the gap, running wide, opening the gap, running wide, and he did it once he got past JT Tammy. Got a great move done in Tammy, couldn't get the car stopped in 5, ran wide again. And for Magnus Dahlgren, he's now got to be looking at what is he going to do here. Is he going to try and just hold Funk as much as possible? You can see he's running wide again. Funk's gone through on the inside. They're going to be side by side on the exit, and at the moment, even Funk waited for the mistake. Jake did exactly what we said, and he goes through now. Dahlgren's going on the back on the offensive on the left-hand side. Is Funk going to be able to hold him down into turn 1? That Toyota GT1, they're going to be running side by side round turn 1. Dahlgren got it done. He did come back at him as well there, Jake, as well. Instantly goes on the defense, cuts off the nose of Funk. Job done for Dahlgren and Funk as they swap positions once more.
I mean, that was inevitable from Dahlgren to make the mistake, but for Funk to not quite be able to finish off the move shows that the Toyota's got good straight line speed, but it's difficult to really make that advantage come back to the driver. So here it is again. Oh, this is another incident. This is Wouter de Bruin having his own a moment coming out of the final turn, I do believe. I'm not quite sure what happened there for the Mercedes. Coming back to the Brian Hall spin, just in front of Wouter de Bruin, that sort of look at the Mercedes reminded me. The big problem there with Brian Hall was that he had too much curb and too much throttle. You can have one or the other, but you can't have both, and that's what threw him off the road. Essentially, he needed to back off the throttle, getting on that high curb to finish off the overtaking move, but because he managed to unsettle the balance of the car by getting onto the curbs, then he decided to counteract it with a little bit of extra throttle. If he'd have stayed off the curbs, that would have been no problem at all, but unfortunately, because he'd already triggered the curb on the inside line, the center of the gravity of the car had already shifted, the transfer of the weight, the lack of grip, it all just played into the same situation. Very unfortunate for Brian Hall, but that's how it's done. And again, now look, Ethan Funk just wants to give Magnus Dahlgren no sense of security whatsoever. 50 laps to go. He's got a much better run off the turn this time. But look, the difference in pace between the Toyota and the Nissan. Look at the straight line speed of the Toyota. That's the only way Magnus Dahlgren is able to stay in front of Ethan Funk now. In terms of raw grip, the Nissan is better than the Toyota. We've seen that several times around the lap. But it's that straight line speed, that acceleration from the Toyota GT1 that is keeping Magnus Dahlgren in third position.
Yeah, it definitely is. He's using it to his advantage, and that is what he's doing. He's making mistakes in the corners. He's managing to hang on down the little short straights that we've got here at the Hungaroring. Once more, we go up front with George Angelidis and Wayne Hutchinson. This is in the LMGT1 AM battle. Angelidis just goes into the pits there as well. So George Angelidis on lap 15 decided enough is enough, and he's gone off, and Wayne Hutchinson can go on his way without George Angelidis closing up behind him. So great job there as well. Hutchinson now on it goes once more, but we're back to this Dahlgren Funk battle. Is Dahlgren, do we think, surviving? Is he surviving by using the pace of the car rather than his ability to get the car away from Funk? Because he is making mistakes, he's running wide, we've seen it, he's slipping up, the whole thing. Is he surviving by the fact that he has got pace in that car on the straights? There we go.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Toyota's definitely got a much better advantage in terms of acceleration. What's interesting, though, is that Risto Corpi is actually... Now, right, Ethan Funk's going to decide, right, this is what we said a couple of laps ago, right? We said Ethan Funk's got to get ahead of Dahlgren and then start to get after Corpi. If he doesn't make it through, he's got to blink first in the pit stops. He's got to try and get that undercut. Now, Magnus Dahlgren is now going to focus purely on Risto Corpi in the Ferrari. He needs to make a gain here. He needs to get into a decent rhythm because that's where his race can be won and lost. Now, we've got Alex Goreczki in the Depth Racing Nissan as he now makes his way out of the final turn. We're on board with Timon Suvic, who is obviously watching this all unfold. So fascinating to see how the diversity of this circuit and the different play-by-play of each car, it really comes into effect. The Toyota is easily one of the fastest cars in a straight line, but in terms of mechanical grip, you've got to think the Panos, the Nissan, the Mercedes, these slightly shorter wheelbase cars, they are the ones with the better opportunity here at the Hungaroring to really make a move of it, as Jason Whitehead still tries his best to keep Alex Goreczki at bay. This is all going to be about Ethan Funk on his outlap. So let's see how it all continues on for him. But Goreczki back up to speed pretty quickly, and I have to say, the way it's played out between Goreczki and Suvic, I think that's justice seemed to be done, isn't it? That's the punishments fit the crime there, essentially, with Suvic having let Goreczki go. There is Ethan Funk in the inset, so he's at turn 2. So we'll have to see if he is able to make the leapfrog on Dahlgren when Dahlgren makes his pit stop. But this is a fascinating little duel, isn't it, between Whitehead and Goreczki? As they tried... Oh, big washout from Goreczki. Did you see that on throttle? The car just squirreling around on throttle as the Depth Racing Nissan very nearly chucked it to the chicken house.
Yeah, he's still chasing down Whitehead, though. He's still not far back from him here in this battle on lap 17. Whitehead runs a little bit wide. Goreczki comes up once more, tucked up right behind him. Round we go. Round turn 11, coming in, turn 12, sorry, coming into 13 now. The left-hander. Good evening, Phil. Welcome in. Hope you are well. We can see you there as well. but Gorechka's now got to try and do exactly kind of what Dahlgren and Funk were doing, with Funk's got to try and go past them. So let's have a look. You can see down in the bottom right hand corner there, Corpy and Dahlgren. Dahlgren is getting closer to Corpy. JT Tammy is close to Ross Smith. Gorechka here as well is close to Whitehead round turn 1. We've got the JT Tammys, we've got the Ross Smiths who are going to be lapped here, and now is how Gorechka uses this traffic. I think for Gorechka as well, over the likes of Whitehead as well, if he's smart now, he would be looking at using JT Tammy to block Whitehead in, but unfortunately didn't quite get alongside him out of that run out of turn 3. He's going to try and stick with him through 4. Maybe he can use Smith to his advantage here, Jake. And unfortunately not for Gorechka, who runs a little bit wide out of turn 4. And now Tumon Subic is now having a go at JT Tammy.
Yeah, it resets the battle a little bit. Speaking of smart, let's talk a little bit about GT2, because at the front of this queue is Ross Smith. At the back of this queue is JT Tammy. That gap was 7 seconds. It isn't anymore. And that just shows you just how much hard work JT Tammy has done, not just on raw pace, but also in the traffic, just trying to get himself in. Right, Risto Corpy has come into the pits. Now, this could actually backfire big time on Magnus Dahlgren, because Dahlgren really wanted to get a little bit closer to Risto Corpy and try and put a bit of a threat towards him. This is cautious stuff now, because Ross Smith is focusing on his own racing line here, and that's going to cause Jason Whitehead a big hold-up. Gorechki's going to get his chance on the inside line. Whitehead's got to commit now to go alongside Ross Smith in the GT2 Marcos. He's got to commit there on the far side. Suvic's going to try and make his bid. Nobody coming into the pits because it's so unpredictable where the cars are going to go through this phase. You've got to go on another lap. So Suvic now trying to get back on terms with Gorechka. Gorechki now closing up on Whitehead. And look, we've suddenly got the two GT2 cars of Smith and Tanny, wheel to wheel, nose to tail again. So GT2, their race has just rebooted.
Yeah, they are. They've come back together once more there as well. You see Whitehead run wide out of turn 1, and that's allowed Gorechka to go through. Is Suvic going to be able to have a go round the outside of 2 here? JT Tammy and Ross Smith are also together. Tammy has caught up to the back of Smith after his spin. And now Ross Smith is trying to hang on from JT Tammy there as well on that run out of 3. Up to 4 we go. If Tammy gets past, though, knowing that the pace he's had here, he could end up leaving Smith in the dust almost. And then that's kind of it for Ross Smith then, of being able to get on to JT Tammy, because as you say, JT Tammy has pulled in a lot of time over Smith here, Jake. And if he clears him, there's nothing saying that Tammy's not going to go away and run away with it.
So true. I mean, look at how much time Tammy has made up. He's now all over the back of Ross Smith again, and now this is the ride of confidence that JT Tammy is running around his head. Look at how much time I've made up. Look at what I've done. I'm right on Ross Smith's tail. He's got nothing. And that confidence, that sort of charisma that he carries with him in the wheel now, that's what's going to edge him closer to Ross Smith to make the mistake. And again, he doesn't even need to overtake him here. He's got a long race to go. He doesn't have to pass Ross Smith here. He just has to put him under pressure. And then Ross Smith will be the one that makes the next mistake. JT Tammy! What are you doing? What are you doing, man? You just got a little bit too close to him on the brakes. That's the problem. You got a little bit too close on the braking.
Another mistake from JT Tammy. Done all the hard work, and well, he's just seen it go there. And I'm sure he's going to be in that car kicking himself for JT Tammy once more. And you see it on the replay here now. Let's see what specifically happened to JT Tammy as it's coming down at the start. That's not what we want to be looking at as well. And just bear with, as we are back with JT Tammy now, who's got 1.9, nearly 2 seconds to make back up. And all of the hard work there, Jake, gone out the window. He's got to go again, and that for him, mentally is going to be tough for him as well, because he sat there thinking, you were just saying he was brewing on confidence, and then he goes and makes a mistake. It's going to be like, well, I've got to go again now. But that's the hardest thing, and his mate gone a little bit deep into one once more. And JT Tammy's got to get his head right. He's got to get it back in the game. He's done it once. He can do it again. And we've still got 44 laps. He's still got time there to make his way back up to this front behind Ross Smith.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I'm JT Tammy at this point, I'm starting to think, right, let's focus on the pit stop now. Because Ross Smith has actually put 2 wheels on the grass there, so he's clearly still making mistakes of his own. Try not to focus too much on Ross Smith now. Focus on getting the rhythm back in the car and then think, right, pit stop time. What are we going to do? We have to get there in front of Ross Smith. We have to beat him to the pit stop. But again, you don't want to push yourself too far into the corner to make a mistake in order to do that. So we've had Pedro Culas Gomez retire from the race. We've also had Gilles Villeneuve in the McLaren now, I'm afraid, pull out of the race as well. So just 19 cars still running here at the Hungaroring. I'm actually really surprised that Magnus Dahlgren is still out there in second position. He hasn't made his pit stop yet. And I have to say, looking at where we were, as we see Ross Smith just drop it on two wheels, and then that's Jason Whitehead, I think. That's Gorechka. That's Gorechka overshooting on the way in front of Ross Smith, so a bit of a mistake. Now, Dahlgren has left it very late to make that pit stop, and I'm actually quite surprised. Looking at how much that Toyota was overcooking it at various points, I'm actually really surprised that he's left it as late as he has. It wasn't Gorechka going off the road, in fact, in front of Ross Smith. It was actually Ethan Funk. So getting himself back into contention after his pit stop. In comes Dan Kirby. Right, this is absolutely no problem at all for Dan Kirby. He's got 14.8 seconds in hand, and he's beaten Dahlgren to the pit stop. So from his point of view, this is nice and easy. He doesn't really have to stress himself too much here. He's got no pressure, so hopefully the pit stop should go perfectly according to plan. He is in pit box. It's all going okay. And from his point of view now, it's just tick over, essentially. He doesn't need to push too hard.
Is that a mistake from Dahlgren not going into the pits, though? That's going to be the problem for him, as we can see here as well. I think
that's a lead change. Oh! Smith and Tammy have hit each other!
Yeah, they've had a comment together. Wout de Bruin just managed to avoid that as well. But the two cars that we didn't want, the only two cars down in the class, have made contact. Ross Smith and JT Tabby there as well. We were a bit late coming to the party on that one round turn 2. So it'd be interesting to see if we can get a little bit further back, if that's something with the our wonderful producer in the background is able to do, as he chuckles at me. So, but we are a little bit late there, but that is kind of the one thing we didn't want to happen. We spoke about it to Smith as well, and he said he just wanted to try and get to that 75%. It is looking like they are going to get to the 75%, but this is the replay of what actually happened to them there as well. Tammy's out in front.
Yeah, look, Smith makes the mistake. Smith overshoots. Yeah. Tammy sees, right, this is my chance. That was actually caused by Ross Smith, not by JT Tammy.
Yeah, Smith put the power down after he made that mistake there, Jake. And unfortunately for him, that car just went round on him, and there was nowhere for JT Tammy to go. And that is the two LMGT2s. They're in contact. Tammy's in the pits. Smart thing to do. I'm surprised Smith ain't coming behind him. But as you say, all Smith's fault. Kirby's just done the fastest lap there as well. All Ross Smith's fault. Too much power after making that slide, Jake. And that was it. Straight across into Tammy on that one.
Well, it's easily done. I mean, let's not throw the book at him, because obviously when you run wide, you're desperately trying to get back to the racing line. He thought he had a couple more inches to be able to hold the outside line, and he just miscalculated. As in comes Dahlgren. Right, Dahlgren is in. Dahlgren's actually a little bit skew-whiff in the pit box, actually, having taken the lead of the race temporarily there. There's Wout de Bruin in the Rookie Monsters Mercedes, as he tries to get himself a little further up from where he is. Now, where's Kirby on track? Kirby is actually in 5th position. He's behind Ethan Funk. Now, let's remind ourselves that Ethan Funk was the first one to pit in. So, Funk actually came in quite a long time ago. He's not only leapfrogged past the drivers he was battling with for second, he's got ahead of Kirby.
Yeah, that seems to be... I'm going to have to we'll keep an eye on that one there, Jake, as well, because it seems to be the fact that Funk is there. Ely is leading the LMGT1 AMS. You can see at the moment, got a massive gap over Day.
And overall,
yeah, leading the whole race currently at the moment for Becky Ely. So a great job there as well that she's doing. But at the same time, that we've still got the battles on the track. You can see JT Tammy just coming out of the pits there as well. We've still got Magnus Dahlgren. He's coming out of the pit lane once more here again. And this pits cycle here, Jake, has really mixed up the field. And especially for Kirby, coming out at the moment, sitting, I believe he's 3rd in class. So for Dan Kirby, he's got some work to do. If he is caught up behind Ethan Funk and Funk hasn't pitted, or has pitted.
Well, Uyan hasn't pitted yet. He's the only one in GT1 that hasn't. But Ethan Funk, he was the earliest of the pit stops. So now Ethan Funk is actually de facto leading this race. Now, he was 4th when he came into the pits earlier. So he was stuck behind Magnus Dahlgren. And that's what we were talking about. Having that clear track, having that opportunity to have nobody to battle with, nobody to get held up by, and just getting those laps in. That's what's brought Ethan Funk forward. And yes, even though he's made a mistake or two here and there, he's not had too many drivers to battle with. He's not got held up by traffic in the same way that Kirby would have done. He's not been tripping over people. He's not had difficulties. He's just had the circuit on his own to play with. And that's what's brought Funk ahead of Kirby. John Uyan, the race leader in GT1, has come into the pits now. So that's amazing, though, how Ethan Funk has managed to get himself into, effectively, the lead of this race. Becky Ely drives on, and so she is still leading the race overall. But, oh no, sorry, she's in the pits as well now. So that means that Ethan Funk, in the Depth Nissan, is leading this race outright. I am stunned at how Ethan Funk was able to turn around a 4-second deficit from the first pit stop to then suddenly find himself lapping the same sort of pace as Kirby and then getting, how far ahead is he now? 14 seconds clear of Kirby. Is now we're going to get Enrique and Goretzky, and they get a little bit too close together. Save of the century from those two, Enrique and Goretzky. That should have been 2 cars into the wall and out of the race. How they managed to keep it together, I do not know.
Yeah, definitely on that one. 2 Tokyo Drift style saves from both of them. Mr. Reese makes some point in chat, possibly the difference between changing and keeping tyres. And that's the thing. Did Ethan Funk change tyres? We'll have a look back here as well at Enrique and Goretzky. You can see them coming now. And this is where it all starts. They're running side by side. And then I believe it's going to be down into this next side. Enrique gets a little bit loose into Goretzky. Goretzky goes onto the grass, saves it overall. And both of them manage to carry on there as well. But Goretzky is now got Enrique right where he wants them. It's a Nissan Toyota battle again. It's a Funk and Dahlgren deja vu here. And you can see the same problem for Enrique as you've seen for Dahlgren. Making mistakes, Goretzky goes through and runs wide in the process, but he manages to keep the position there as well. Same thing again, Toyota GT, Nissan R390, and then Nissan comes out in front, and as we can see, Funk is out the front, leading the field overall.
I think Enrique's got more damage than we first thought, as Dahlgren is going to make his bid on the inside of Corby. He's going to go side by side there. And they battle away right behind Kirby. How about this for a race battle? This is now an opportunity for Dahlgren to get into 2nd position up the inside of Kirby. Having dealt with Corby, he's now got past Kirby in the same breath. Absolutely terrific as he gets through. So Dahlgren there, managing to work his way forward. Oh no, sorry, that is the other CMS Propanos that they were lapping there. My apologies. I got very excited about that, but certainly a nice move though, all the same from... So Corby making the bid there on the inside of the panels, and he got held up. As a result of that, Dahlgren, look, he goes off the road, but he decides, look, I've still got speed and pace. I'm going to commit to this anyway. Now, that's going to be picked up on, isn't it? Because Dahlgren has effectively made the overtake on Corby from off the road. That'll be an interesting one to unpick.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to look back a bit. I'll be surprised if nothing happens, to be honest with you. I think they're going to take into the situation. How long did the overtake happen? Why he was off the side of the circuit? Or did he get back alongside to make the overtake using that back marker? So we'll see what happens. Oliver Day is leading the LMGT1 AMS category at that moment over Becky Ely. Becky's 5.5 seconds back there. Not too sure what we've missed on that one, but clearly for Becky Ely in the pit stop as well, and Oliver Day leading it there as well. Is this a low grip track or is it just hot as the cars look very squirrely? It is hot here, Phil, where tyre deg is going to play a massive part in this race here as well. And the longer these goes on, the more deg these guys are going to use. And as we say, it's the difference between whether or not they're going to change or whether or not they're going to try and double stint. For Daniel Kirby, he didn't double stint it. He did take tyres straight away. So there we go. It's all going to be up in the arms. Very interesting as this race goes on here as well. So yeah, we'll get back to the action once more, as we can see, Oliver Day leading the LMGT1 and Becky Ely 6 seconds back there, Jake. Clearly, pit stops didn't work out too well for Becky Ely.
I just wonder if Oliver Day decided to do the same thing that Ethan Funk did. He clearly saw, well, I'm in a bit of a sticky situation. I've got traffic, so I'm going to pit in nice and early. And again, just give himself some clear track. And that's how he was able to get himself into a strong position here in front of Becky Ely. However, that is just this phase of the race. There's still more to do. Oliver Day certainly grounding in with that Ferrari and giving himself the best chance to claim back the victory. Still a long way to go, as Timon Suvic is now behind Becky Ely. Let's give Becky Ely some credit, though, because she is currently still there in the mix, currently chasing down Gorechka, I think that is, as Jason Whitehead is now following in the wheel tracks of, that's got to be Philippe Enrique, dives up on the inside line and gets through on Enrique, who drifts out wide.
Yeah. Enrique running wide there, makes a mistake coming out, and Whitehead is gone through. And that seems to be the story of the Toyotas this evening. For the likes of Enrique, for the likes of Dahlgren, the Toyotas aren't looking too comfortable around here. The R390s, as you say, and the Panos of Kirby, they're looking a little bit more secure on track here. So these guys are hoping that in the Toyotas they are changing tyres. I think double stinting for them would just be absolutely horrendous. And I think tyres do get destroyed pretty quickly here at the Hungaroring as well. And for Ethan Funk, who's doing a stellar job. Kirby is 7.7 seconds back. Dahlgren's behind that as well. Kirby is faster, but that's something that was expected, isn't it? Kirby is, and potentially was going to be quicker than Funk anyway, because Kirby was leading the race something by about 14 seconds, I think, at one point.
Well, he was, but when when Funk came into the pits originally, he was only about 5-6 seconds back. So Funk has actually gained time on Kirby by keeping the track in front of him clear for a decent amount of time. So is Kirby actually leading this race? That's a good question, because Funk may obviously have a completely different strategy now compared to Kirby. He's decided to go short, long, long, whereas Kirby might well be going long, long, short. And that means essentially that Funk is going to have the opportunity and the advantage now, but by the time it gets to the final pit stop rotation, Kirby's actually going to have the upper hand, even if he's behind Funk on track, because he's actually able to go quicker. Look at him through the stints, and look at him through the sectors on this lap alone. Kirby 0.3 of a second quicker on the first sector, 0.4 of a second quicker on the second. So Kirby clearly with better rhythm than Ethan Funk, but he didn't have better track position because he had to go through the traffic, whereas Ethan Funk didn't. Ethan Funk was a good half a minute, 40 seconds back, so he didn't have any traffic to get held up by. He didn't have any issues to really take into account. So Funk actually took 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward, and that's why he's now leading the race. But Kirby, now that he's got no traffic to deal with, he's the one who can really bang in those laps and try and catch Ethan Funk unawares.
Yeah, he is at the moment. It's down to 6.5 seconds currently for Ethan Funk, with Dan Kirby in second place, closing him down. JT Tammy leads the LMGT2 AMS with Ross Smith about 11 seconds back. Day leads the LMGT1 AMS and 5 seconds. Just broke under 5, 4.7 now for Becky Ely. So a great job from Becky, mixing it up here once more and trying to close down on Oliver Day. So that's going to be a battle that we'll keep an eye on here as well. For the people that haven't taken tyres, I should say, which we think Ethan Funk and possibly Oliver Day didn't, just how much of a struggle are they going to get by the time they get to lap 40? Surely they've got to be thinking of trying to come back in again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in GT1 AM in particular, it's the same story as Funk and Kirby. Day obviously pitted earlier than Ely, and as a result has been able to get a few seconds clear. But looking at the pace of Becky Ely, she's got so much rhythm in that McLaren. We saw it in the beginning of qualifying. Once she managed to really dial in the McLaren, she was able to come up with a much faster lap time. We've got a replay coming up on screen because we were watching John Uyan closing up on Philippe Enrique. This is the Ferrari of Oliver Day. Whoops.
No, it's George Angelidis.
Oh, that's Angelidis, I'm told, actually. So George Angelidis drifting wide, managing to get it back on the road again. He's obviously bidding for the podium in GT1 AM. So a bit of a moment there as he drifted it out through turn 4. Managed to keep it together. He's about 27 seconds off the pace of Oliver Day in the sister Ferrari. That is, of course, his teammate, as John Uyan battling away to try and close up now on Philippe Enrique. So John Uyan trying to work his way further forward.
Yeah, John Uyan here, trying to stay and try and keep up with Felipe Enrique. So let's see what Uyan's going to be able to do. There's not a lot between them currently at the moment. Uyan and Enrique 0.2 back. Uyan in that Panos GTR there is trying to get onto the back of Enrique in that Toyota. We've seen the Toyota struggle. We've seen him make mistakes. We've seen Dahlgren made a mistake in a Toyota. Are we going to see Enrique do the same? Is this all about where John Uyan can try and do the same to Enrique as Funk did to Dahlgren? He's putting him under pressure. We're going down into turn 13, the left-hander now. And for John Uyan, he's got to try and stay as close as possible to Enrique going down this last corner. Uyan goes up the inside. Enrique makes a mistake, but we know the pace of the Toyota here, Jake. But it doesn't look like Enrique's going to be able to capitalise as Dahlgren did on the first one with Funk.
Very true. Now this is where Felipe Enrique needs to be quite smart in terms of letting John Uyan go here and slotting in behind him. You don't want to just go straight for the undercut move again. You have to really bed in what the car can and can't do, and we know that the Toyota doesn't have the same strength as the Panos over one lap. What he does have, though, is the ability to look after the tyres better. That's where you're going to get the advantage. It's not going to be on one lap pace, it's going to be on tyre management. And John Uyan able to make light pickings there of Felipe Enrique, because we know that Toyota has had a tendency to get a little bit tail happy. Now Dahlgren has actually learnt the lessons of that very effectively, and he now finds himself in third place ahead of Risto Corpi. Corpi has suddenly fallen away from the podium. Fourth position for him now in the Ferrari compared to Dahlgren, who has finally got the handle of that Toyota in this section of the race. Finds himself in third position, just 13 seconds back from Kirby. So this is really strong, and a great renaissance from Magnus Dahlgren, who in the first stint, the car was all over the shop. This time, not only has he been able to get a handle on it, but he's actually got decent battle and gap now on Risto Corpi in fourth position. Now here is Dan Kirby. Why are we watching him? Because that man in front is Ethan Funk, and it looks as though Dan Kirby closing in on Mr. Uptown Funk, and he's going to give it to him.
Yeah, it's been closing in about 2 seconds a lap faster. Kirby on a 142.407, Funk on a 144.906 last time around there. So for Dan Kirby, he is on a mission. Gap's down to 1.3, and by the end of this lap, if it's anything to go by, he will be within striking distance coming out of basically down the start-finish straight down into turn one. It's now then up to Kirby where he makes that move. Now for Ethan Funk there, you can see a back marker in front of him. Is it going to be causing him problems here as well, or is Dan Kirby and Ethan Funk going to be able to clear back this back marker? We're just coming now, just touching 1.1. We're just dropping down a little bit, but coming down to nearly below a second. Funk does get held up there, Jake, and this is going to be Kirby allowed to be able to close right back up in the hands of the back marker. And now we go on to Becky Ely here as well, battling down in the LMGT1 AM category. She's trying to close down Oliver Day. That is Day in front of her. Becky Ely again pulled out a bunch of time on him, Jake, and she's doing a great job as normal.
Very much so, and this is where, you know, you've got to be quite consistent, but you've also got to be very, very calm and measured. And Becky Ely has been one of the best out there at looking after tyres. We keep saying this, you don't have to have the fastest car on the circuit at the Hungaroring. You do need to be a bit of a mastermind when it comes to keeping the tyre life as smooth and consistent as possible. And how many times really in the race so far have you seen Becky Ely drop the ball? How many times have you seen her run wide? How many times have you seen her overdrive the car? That McLaren looks pretty planted, and it's been that way ever since the start of the race. She's had to dodge a couple of drivers, but that's about it. Now we're going to see a potential lead change as Dan Kirby is literally spitting the fumes of Ethan Funk. They've got a Ferrari in front of them. That's going to be George Angelidis, I do believe, that they've got to get out of the way off fairly rapidly. And now an opportunity as Funk is going to use the opportunity to try and get past the Ferrari. The Ferrari is dawdling. This is not good news for Funk. It's perfect, though, as he just manages to get the move done. Dan Kirby goes with him. So Kirby will now surely be sizing up an overtake on Ethan Funk into turn one. They come up to the final corner. Get easy on the throttle, easy on the throttle. Don't overdrive it at this point. Just keep nice and steady. The Panos has got line speed. Kirby's got a good exit off the turn as well, so surely a look into turn 1 is possible. Whether he finishes the move or not, that's going to be a very different matter, but Dan Kirby is going to have the confidence and conviction. He has a look. He tries to make Funk overdrive the car. Not going to happen. Funk was not born yesterday.
We've lost Becky Ely. We have lost Becky Ely. She is DNF'd currently at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
We're not sure why. We are trying to find out here as well what happened to Becky Ely, and we'll keep trying to find out in the process here. But she has DNF'd out of this race currently. And for Becky Ely, that is absolutely heartbreaking, doing such a stellar job there as well. But now Dan Kirby is back up behind Ethan Funk. The gap is out to about 3 tenths. Kirby's weighing him up here. They're going to be all on Kirby to try and get him. As we said, catching's one thing, getting past is another thing for Dan Kirby. He's caught up to the back of Funk now, and he's just got to try and get past him. Round 6 and 7 they go, coming off at round 1.8, going into the left-hander, down into 11, the right-hander now. Where's Kirby got to do it here, Jake? Is he going to try and do it? He's got to do it out of 14 down into 1, right? Or, as we see now, anywhere on track.
He's Dan Kirby. I don't think he even needs to make the overtake. He needs to essentially just sit behind Ethan Funk and let him do all the hard work. He's got to focus on the victory here, Dan Kirby, not just the overtake to take the lead. This is about looking after your tyres. We've said it time and time again. This is not going to be about making the Banzai fantastic move that takes everybody's breath away. He wants to win the race. He wants to consolidate the pace that Penos has got. So he's not going to be all guns blazing, charging up the inside, making the audacious overtake. He's going to be calculated. He's going to be tactical here. He doesn't just want to rush in. And this is all going to be about just giving yourself the chance to breathe. Kirby right in behind Funk here, and again, he just doesn't need to make too much of an issue of it. Now, interestingly, Becky Ely has come back out onto the circuit again and has rejoined in 5th position, so has come back into the pits again now, actually, so back into the pit lane for Becky Ely. Such a shame as well, because for me, the driver of the race today, up to that point, was Becky Ely. Kirby again getting a bit level alongside Ethan Funk, but again he doesn't have to commit to it, and that's why, because Funk is the one who makes the mistake here, not Dan Kirby. He edges Funk against the ropes. This is like a boxing match. He's just trying to make him make all the mistakes, so Kirby can sit there in 2nd position. So it'll be very interesting to see how it all plays out. But again, the mistake off the chicane, that's all it needed to be. Kirby is through. Perfect.
Yeah, waited and waited and waited, and for Ethan Funk, it was the other way round for him, Jake, compared to what was happening with Magnus Dahlgren. It was Funk being the pressure. It was Funk being the lion chasing down the gazelle. And now we've got Dan Kirby, the lion, who's chased down the gazelle. And unfortunately for Ethan Funk, he made that mistake, and Kirby's going to go through. And to be honest with you, I don't think Funk's going to be able to get back at him. I think now Kirby being 2 seconds a lap near enough quicker. Obviously, their last lap was together, but they were in battling with each other. I think Funk is into the pits on the left-hand side. You just saw that there. As we go back to Oliver Day, currently first in the LMGT1 AMS. And I believe for Oliver Day, is that Gorechka tucked right behind him at the moment?
Fascinating stuff. Really, really exciting to see Oliver Day now in a position to basically just run on his own now. All the pressure is gone with Becky Ely back out on track, by the way, but just all gone in terms of the race victory. So unfortunate for Becky Ely. It was looking really, really strong for her. I was about to make the point when Dan Kirby made the move there on Ethan Funk, who does decide to come into the pits and consolidate having that overtake made. But Becky Ely, up to that point for me, driver of the race, because you've got to take into account, not only was she the class of the field in GT1 AM up to that point, making the gains to come back to Oliver Day, but in the early stages, she was keeping rhythm and pace with the likes of, John Ouillard, with Wouter de Bruin, with Jason Whitehead. These are guys who are not slouches. They are not slow drivers at all. But she was not only hanging with them, but keeping similar sort of pace. And this is the kind of development you love to see from drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for Becky Ely, she's just got stronger and stronger and stronger as the season has gone on. And it's doing an absolute fantastic job. We'll try and find out clearly what happened to Becky Ely there as well, whether or not there was a disconnect, whether or not there was an issue or technical issue. as you say. The problem is, obviously, guys, as well, we are all online. Everything is online, the internet, the electric, any points, the software, the equipment, anything could go wrong here. And that's one of the things you pray that doesn't happen, but unfortunately it can happen. And now John Uyan is tracing down even Funk. The gap's down to about to near enough 5.3. It's actually gone out, so Funk is doing a stellar job at maintaining that gap over John Uyan. And Kirby now 9.8 seconds over Dahlgren as well. And Day is, well, he's literally practically half a lap ahead of Hutchinson there as well. And Jason Whitehead has gone into the pits. So that was who John Uyan was chasing down, but Whitehead has gone into the pits here. Surely now, right, Jake, when we look at the standings on the left-hand side, we've seen Kirby close down a massive gap on front. This is Wouter de Bruin, I believe, in that car there in the Rookie Monsters Mercedes-Benz CLK. I'll get back to where I was going with that one, Jake, in a minute, as chasing down Wayne Hutchinson here as well. So this could be an interesting situation for Wouter de Bruin. What's going to be happening with him at the moment? But Wouter de Bruin's had a bit of a mixed race, hasn't he? He's been caught up, he's had an incident himself, he's nearly got caught in the JT Tammy Ross Smith incident. So Wouter de Bruin is going to go away from that, thinking I've had an action-packed race here, and he's now trying to close down on the drivers in front of him at the moment.
So it all continues to scrabble away, but this is where things get really spicy. Wouter de Bruin just keeping his wits about him here behind Hutchison. He's got to be so cautious. All it takes is just one eager beaver of a move and it's all going to get away. So Wouter de Bruin, who's not had the best of races, this has been a very unusual one for him, but good to see that he is still keeping it mixed up there and still trying to get himself into a strong position. With a very tricky opportunity for the contenders, but it is a really exciting battle for all of the drivers out there. Wouter de Bruin watching and waiting. Hutchison getting a little bit close in there behind the Mercedes, as again they get a little bit of speed up. Looking very strong up to this point. Into the pits comes the Mercedes-Benz then. That's pretty much perfect timing really, because he didn't really want to get in the middle of all of that. So Wouter de Bruin's going to get a run off the final turn to draw level with Hutchison. They're going to go side by side down the straight, and surely this is the moment for Wouter de Bruin. He just needs to stay present. He doesn't need to outbrake the car now because he's far enough alongside that he'll have the edge. He just needs to keep that inside line. Perfect. Textbook overtake.
Yeah, Wouter de Bruin, job done down into turn one. So a great job from Wouter de Bruin there. Moves himself up into 8th overall currently at the moment. So a stellar job from him as well. As we say, he's had a very up and down race. A very, I don't know, somewhat bizarre to be honest. For Wouter de Bruin, it's not something we generally see. We were talking about driving standards and stuff like that, and Wouter de Bruin is right up there when it comes to being, you know, one of the best in this series. He's taken a victory this season as well for Wouter de Bruin in the 2.5 hours of Daytona. So for him, this race is I think it's now more of a consolidation to see how far he can actually get here, Jake. And I think that's one of the things for Wouter de Bruin. He's just got to settle in now, hasn't he? He's got about 29 laps to go. And it's all about just seeing where he can end up, I think. Because as you say, and I say, he's had a very, I don't know, somewhat weird race.
Yeah, it's been uncharacteristic for Wouter de Bruin. And we generally tend to see him towards the top 3 on most occasions, and certainly on every count. I don't know whether it's this particular car or this particular circuit or this particular car on the circuit, but it certainly hasn't been a vintage Wouter de Bruin effort so far. Still time for it to change. We're bidding into the second half of the race now. So obviously there's still quite a bit of work to do. But there is Day into the pits, taking the opportunity to have a little bit of breathing space out there now over Hutchison to make the pit stop at this point. So no major pressure for Oliver Day, the race leader in GT1 AM. Just to keep it all neat and tidy from his perspective. So it'll definitely be very interesting to see how it all continues. But Kirby certainly settling into the rhythm now. 10.7 clear of Dahlgren. Funk having made his second stop, don't forget, down to 3rd position in front of Uyan, Suvik and De Bruin. So still plenty to go as we are on lap 36 out of the 64. There's still very much a race in the offing. A win coming the way of Dan Kirby if it all continues as follows.
Kirby's just got to keep it on track, I think, Jake, to be honest. He's just got to do what Kirby has done in that first segment of the race where he went into he was out in front by like 14 seconds in the pits there, and he come out behind Funk. He caught up with Funk. He went past him. He took the lead. He's opened up another still on 11 seconds here. So for Dan Kirby, really, the win is his unless he makes a drastic mistake. Now, Day is obviously pitted there as well because Hutchinson has jumped Oliver Day in the LMGT1 AMS. I am expecting that to switch when Hutchinson goes into the pit. So at the moment, Day is in second, but again, he had a massive lead, absolutely huge. And I think Wayne Hutchinson's managed to get past in the pits, but that should swap over. Down in the LMGT2s, Tammy has been leading Ross Smith for pretty much most of the race. Tammy's made a couple of mistakes. He's been back on it again to try and catch up with Smith. He did manage to get past Smith. There was a moment where they made contact as well, so it was all a little bit messy down in the GT2s. As we said, Ross Smith was probably responsible for that one. Runs a little bit wide, hits the gas, spins the car up, and unfortunately JT Tammy was there to be collected. So it's been an action-packed 37 laps. I'm not going to lie here, Jake, and I don't think the last half or the last third of this race is done either. I think there's still more to come, but it's just trying to find out where it's going to come. Is it going to come in the AMS? Is it going to come in the pros? Because everyone's pretty spread out at the moment.
I think we've had the real sort of cataclysm of the strategies really start to play out in the first half of the race. That's not to say that there isn't going to be another hurricane breezing through the strategy battle. I think there's still going to be a couple of drivers that will find it harder than others to get their tyres up to temperature in the same way. Don't forget the track is evolving all the time, so what worked in the first section probably may not work the second section of the race, and then potentially again the third as more rubber goes down. Alex Gorechka having a nice little duel there with Wouter de Bruin, so that's 4 track position, I do believe. That's 4 P6. Yep. So Wouter de Bruin has Alex Gorechka all over the back of him, and they're trying to close up on the GT2 race of Ross Smith, who is 11 seconds, 12 seconds back now from JT Tammy. I think that was actually good composure from Ross Smith, knowing that he was the instigator essentially of the little love tap between him and JT Tammy. He dropped back behind him quite intentionally and has given him plenty of space to play with as the race has gone on. He now gives the space away to De Bruin and Gorechka, who continue to battle. And let's not forget that in 8th position, directly behind them, is the leader in GT1 AM. That is Wayne Hutchison, who hasn't yet made his second pit stop, although the former leader in GT1 AM, Oliver Day, has. And Hutchison was kind of backed away from making the pit stop there as Alex Gorechka got a little bit too close. Now that, I think, was a little bit of a mistake, a big mistake from Gorechka. He got a better throttle application initially from Wouter de Bruin, but he realized he was going to hit him. But instead of kind of backing off the throttle and lifting, what he did was try and turn it out a little bit further to the left and then tighten it back up again. Once you've committed to that inside line of radius, you've got to back off the throttle if you think there's going to be contact, rather than change the trajectory, because he's actually lost a heck of a lot more time than he would have done. Fortunately for him, he's been able to make it back. So now he's got Wouter de Bruin very much on the lock stops. Surely he's not going to try something here. He's going to go to the side of Wouter de Bruin in the hope that de Bruin will make the mistake. Oh, goodness me. Gorechka definitely giving Wouter de Bruin the hurry up.
Wow, that was just so much more speed. Round turn 4 for Gorechka and de Bruin. You can see them make contact. I'm surprised both men are still going, because we've seen people spin for less than that as well. Gorechka's now going to try and go up the inside, coming out of 8. De Bruin's going to have the inside. He makes a mistake. Gorechka goes through. And to be honest with you, Jake, for both of them to survive that, I am actually surprised. He's off. Oh, he saved it. They're back again.
He caught one wheel on the curb. It threw the car off to the left, and somehow he managed to get on the brakes with enough force and a little bit of adhesion to get the car turned in again. Save of the race from Alex Gorechka. That was absolutely awe-inspiring. Let's look again. So he's made the move on Wouter de Bruin coming out of the chicane. Here he comes. He tightens the radius. Beautifully done as he gets on the throttle. Then he comes through onto the left-hand side of the circuit. There's the mistake from de Bruin. So Gorechka thinks he's got it done. He thinks it's all sorted. He's got on the curb on the exit of the right. Now through the left. Watch, look. He's caught the throttle there on the curb. Somehow he catches it. That is absolutely sensational from Gorechka. How did he save that?
Well, only he will know on that one, Jake. I can guarantee if that was me, I'd be in the wall. But for Alex Goretzka, he did save it. He's now opened up a gap over Wout de Bruin as well. Not only did he just save the car, he's gone and opened up a gap. And now Wayne Hutchinson in the LMGT1 AMS is battling away with Wout de Bruin. I want to point out there is Oliver Day. He's in the background. He's a second back at the moment as well for Day. So for Day, this is it. He needs to clear Hutchinson. He had a massive lead over before the pit stop that Oliver Day made. And now he's going again, and he is looking quick. Oliver Day in that Ferrari 333 over the Mercedes-Benz CLK here, Jake. And it looks like Oliver Day, not only could he get Hutchinson, but at the moment he's looking quicker than De Bruin in front of him as well.
He certainly is. He's got to be very cautious about the timing of it all. But certainly the car looking very strong after the pit stop. That's what fresh tyres can give you in terms of confidence. So the threshold is very high, and that's exactly where he needs to continue to position himself. So it's all looking very good from his perspective, but you've also got to be very cautious. We've got the onboard of Oliver Day on the inset. So you can see now Hutchinson trying to get a slightly faster radius out of the turn. Then Wout de Bruin, that opens the door for Oliver Day. Day's got confidence on the inside, but now on the outside for the next hairpin. How much do you get the turn in here? Oliver Day's going to drive the car right round the outside of Wayne Hutchinson. Beautifully done. He gets a little bit on the curb. That should be enough though on throttle to get back on terms down the straight. So Hutchinson's not going to be close enough to throw this one up the inside line unless he makes a very bold lunge indeed. And so that was nicely finished off by Oliver Day. And now, as he said, oh, careful on the curb. That I was going to say he's going to have more of an opportunity here to take on Wout de Bruin. But after making that little mistake, that gives Wayne Hutchinson a second chance.
Yeah, Hutchinson, you can see on the inside, the bottom right-hand corner, right up behind Day now. Day was almost looking like he could have tightened up that corner and gone past Wout de Bruin. He is going to try and get past Wout de Bruin. I did say he was looking quicker. He doesn't want to get held up here from De Bruin. He wants to try and clear him to open up more of a gap over Hutchinson at the moment here as well. De Bruin is struggling. We've said that already. He's had a very up and down race. It's been a very mixed race for De Bruin. And now, just to throw spanners in it, we're going to have all three classes on the track in the same picture very, very shortly, because just going round the right-hander is JT Tammy. So, JT Tammy now is going to be in the mix with Wout de Bruin, in the mix with Oliver Day. We're going to have GT1, GT1 AMS and GT2s all in the same category here. And out of all of them, Oliver Day is looking the quickest, Jake.
Certainly looking very strong. Dives up the inside. Perfectly executed there on Wout de Bruin. I think De Bruin realised, look, that guy is not in the same class as me. He's clearly got raw pace. He's going to try and come back at him, but there was not a lot of point to fight him. However, that gap is going to open up again for another Ferrari to try and get through on Wout de Bruin. So what can Risto Corpi now do? So Risto Corpi, who's lost all sorts of time in this race, but now an opportunity knocking there as Oliver Day gets it a little bit wide out of the turn. So Risto Corpi and Wout de Bruin are now in a drag race to the first corner, with Wout de Bruin holding all of the opportunities to finish this off, but Corpi is going to go much deeper on the brakes. Thanks very much. I'll take that. Thank you.
Yeah, Risto Corpi getting Wout de Bruin done down in turn one. He's now going to try and go after Oliver Day. Day really in existence. He doesn't really want to go there. Kirby's in the pits. Kirby is in the pits here as well. And Oliver Day, that was Risto Corpi, looked like he just got a little bit out of shape as he's trying to catch up to the back of Wout de Bruin. Corpi is another one that's had an interesting race as well here, as we're going to jump onto the replay once more and see what happens as well. 2 seconds on that one as well, but now Risto Corpi and Wout de Bruin. Oh, Risto's going to go out the inside of 6. They're going to be too wide. Are they going to be able to make it through? I think they have, and I think that's Corpi over Wout de Bruin. Job done. He's another man that's had somewhat, big old squirrely there, Jake, as well. And for Risto Corpi in that Ferrari, 3-3 there. Definitely got the job over the Wout de Bruin, but he's also another one that's in the same category here once more. As JT Tammy has now, a big old slide in the background.
Big issue. Now, that's a Panos going off.
That's Huyan, isn't it?
That is John Huyan. Yeah, John Huyan got spat out there in the middle of that gaggle. So let's see how it happened, because obviously Kirby's in the pits. So that's John Uyan. He just got a little love tap there, I think, from Angelidis, and that's enough because it got the paint on squirrely, and then there was a final kiss of death as Uyan lost the front end of the car and spewed back into the side of Angelidis again. Oh, sorry, no, it was Gilles Lalonde, not John Uyan. So Gilles Lalonde, who is still there or thereabouts, he's had a quiet race, all truth be told, and he now gets out of the way of John Uyan, actually. So Uyan manages to get through no problem, but Gilles Lalonde, who's had a bit of a nightmare race, and that kind of sets the tone for it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's another one that's not going to be going away from this one happy at the moment. You see Ethan Funk, that's Becky Ely in front of Funk as well. Of course, Ely is, I think she's still just about 2 laps down at the moment there for Becky Ely. Ethan Funk goes in a little bit too hard. There's a car coming back on. That is a panel, and that's her Woo de Bruin on the left-hand side there. The Woo de Bruin coming back. He's
Oh, De Bruin!
Oh, Woo de Bruin. We've said he's had a mixed race, and that just basically sums it up, Jake, doesn't it? He has had such a rough race. Yeah,
it really does. This is the look. He's already had a spin earlier on in the race as well, in the lap. Sorry, so he's spun it at turn 2. He's got the car in reverse. He's got it going again, but he's used a lot of throttle to get that car back on the track from the grass, and then he's had to go onto the curb to avoid the race leader, and then it's all finished off. That this race has been all about confidence, and it just looks to me as though Wood de Bruin in that Mercedes has had absolutely no confidence in his car whatsoever around this place. You've got to have a symbiotic relationship with your car. You've got to know how it's handling. You've got to know how it's going to perform, how it's going to behave. And it just looks as though Wood de Bruin has had absolutely no consistency, no fluidity at any point through this race.
Absolutely. I cannot sit here and agree with you any more than I'm going to sit here and say I 100% agree with you. He has not been confident in that Mercedes whatsoever, whereas Wayne Hutchinson in the other Mercedes, of course, has looked a little bit more confident there as well. Brian Hall, Stephen Miller, they're all in Mercs, and they all seem to be able to get control of their Merc, where Wout de Bruin has, it's just been horrible. He didn't do well in qualifying, he hasn't done well in the race, and for Wout de Bruin, he's just going to go away and think, I need to forget this one, because he definitely has not been very, very confident in that car. To be honest with you, though, the Hungaroring is tricky, and if you haven't got your car set up how you want it and it's driving how you want it, every corner potentially could kill you. And that's the thing, as you can see with Alex Gorechka there as well, big old slide in that 390. And again, you know, you've got to have confidence in what you've got underneath you. And if you haven't, if one setting's off or something's not right, sim racers are very finicky. You know, they know when their car is underneath them, they know when they're not. And what has JT Tammy been up to here as well? Going down.
Oh no, that's so poor. That's so poor from the Ferrari. That's so poor because it gets so far back. JT Tammy is doing his own thing, minding his own business there as the leader in the class. And the Ferrari has missed his braking point completely. He thought, well, that's only a GT2. I'll be able to get past that, no problem at all. And JT Tammy now finds himself in the pits. Disaster.
Now, was that Angelidis or was that Oliver Day? That's going to be the question there as well. I didn't see which one it was. It was definitely a Ferrari, but was it Oliver Day who did that, or was it George Angelidis? So we'll try and see if we can get back and see which one of them it was there that unfortunately put JT Tammy around. This is Magnus Dahlgren here as well, going through now, which I think is Angelidis, because Becky Ely is in front at the moment on track. Obviously she's a couple of laps down, so she's not obviously within the race scenario, but Magnus Dahlgren absolutely flying there as well, Jake, and that's the thing, we need to kind of find out if that was Angelidis all day. One of them rushed an overtake there, and unfortunately for JT Tammy, he was on the reciprocal end of a nice little tap on the bottom.
Yeah, not intentional at all to spit a GT2 car off the road, not intentional in the slightest, but just missing the braking point completely and just hoping, well, that GT2 is going to get out of the way and I'll save my bacon. Unfortunately, it's cost JT Tammy the victory with 20 laps to go. He's had to come into the pits to repair it. He's now over a minute behind Ross Smith, which is exactly what can happen, obviously, when you're tripping over traffic, but it really has, indeed not. So John Uyan has pitted on this particular lap, however. I noticed that neither Ferrari has actually come into the pits, neither Day nor Angelidis. has come in from first or second in GT1 AM, so it clearly hasn't damaged either car enough to warrant a pit stop. And unfortunately there, that means that for JT Tammy, he's got a race ruined and nothing really to show for it in terms of compensation either. There's Kirby, who is in third position having made his second stop. Funk, of course, has already made his. Dahlgren, I don't think, has yet. So Dahlgren continues on his way, waiting for stop number 2. But Funk is really going to be riding the crest of, you know, will he need another pit stop and where will he come out as a result of that stop? Dan Kirby, having stretched the pit stop a little further, you've got to think here, you know, who's going to have the ultimate lead when this all shakes up? Because if there's going to be a third stop needed for both Funk and Kirby, then Kirby has not quite got enough done yet. He really needs to bed down and find something over the course of the next 5 laps in order to try and, you know, guesstimate where Funk is going to have the upper hand. There is JT Tammy back out on track, so at least he's still got a chance to take the win away from Ross Smith again. But, you know, over the next 20 laps, he's going to make up over a minute.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but we've seen him make up 7 over a very short period of time. So he's got 19 laps to go. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it as well. It depends on what Smith's got to do with his fuel, with his pit stops, everything at the moment here as well. So there's a lot for JT Tammy to think about, but one of the things I would be thinking about, just put your head straight down and go from there. Now, Mr. Reese, a controversial comment in YouTube. Tammy looked like he or she wanted to let the GT1 pass and then turned into the corner. What do you reckon, Jake?
Very tricky to read the situation here. I think Magnus Dahlgren may actually about to get himself back into the hunt for the victory, because if you think about the way that he has gone from being all over the shop in the early phase of the race to suddenly more restrained and more calm and smooth, we've barely seen anything. Oh, hang on, it looks as though Becky Ely has now fully retired from the race, so very unfortunate indeed for the former leader and of course championship leader currently of this season, Becky Ely, retiring from the race. That's very unfortunate for her. So big difficulties there. But no, to come back to Magnus Dahlgren, I genuinely think he could be a race-winning contender here, because he's only 3.7 back from Funk. He's definitely ironed out the kinks from the first stint. We saw that Toyota all over the place in the first stint, and he wasn't able to get the car around at all. Now he has completely tidied up the style of driving that was required to get that car through these bends, and Ethan Funk is not out of reach.
No, it's not, and I'm also fearful for Dahlgren just purely because of the pace that Kirby has shown here as well. He's been absolutely flying. That is Dahlgren down in the insert in the bottom right hand corner. You can just see him in the background. That is Wouter de Bruin behind him as well. Don't go too far out. That's also caused a problem. There's that wonderful little drain that also causes a problem coming out of turn 4 on the right hand side. I've seen multiple cars in multiple series hit that, put the throttle down and end up going round. So he's got to be careful for Ethan Funk, but it's now roles reversed. It's now Funk in front of Dahlgren, and it's now Dahlgren in front of Kirby. And Kirby is now closing, Jake. He's pulled it down from 4 seconds. We're down to 3.7. And with the fact of the last time as well, Kirby was literally about 1 or 2 attempts quicker than Dahlgren. He's already shown pace, he's already shown that he's 2 seconds faster than Funk, and he did it in that middle sector. You can't count Kirby out here. And as much as I'd love to say that Dahlgren could be in the fight, I'm a little bit worried for Kirby, I'm a little bit worried for Dahlgren, who could end up just getting swept aside by Kirby here, purely because of the pace on that Panos. He is so quick.
Again, it comes down to the fact that the Panos has just got so much of a better traction out of these corners. This is not a Monza, this is not a Spa, this is a Hungaroring, so it's not about straight line speed, it's not about pace, it's about mechanical grip through the bends. You've got 14 really complex dynamic corners on this circuit, and Dan Kirby and the CMS Pro Panos definitely seems to have a little bit more traction out of the slower apexes and plenty of commitment through the faster ones to keep these guys honest. Ethan Funk in the Nissan, I still think this car is a bit of an all-rounder. It's fast in a straight line where it needs to be, but it's also got good traction in some of those tougher apexes, as we just see in the background, synchronized slipping from, first of all, Magnus Dahlgren, and then from Wouter de Bruin, tucked in behind him there in the Mercedes.
Both of them going off together there. The only thing that has allowed it to do, you can see him now in the bottom right hand corner, is that Panos of Dan Kirby. He can see it now. That mental thing that happens when you're in a sim racing car. You see a car in front, you see the guy you're trying to chase down, and all of a sudden you become 2 seconds quicker. Where did the pace come from? We have no idea. Mentally, though, for Dan Kirby, he can see him now. He can see Dahlgren. He's going to track him down. He's going to hunt Dahlgren down. And with that pace that Dahlgren has shown, with Kirby has shown, I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple of laps, Kirby is battling with Dahlgren. And now for Funk, that is John Uyan in front of him as well, of course, from the CMS Pro. Dan Kirby from the CMS Pro. So let's see whether or not Uyan is going to shift it, or if he's going to just maybe hold Funk up a little bit.
So this is going to be Ethan Funk just trying to work his way past the panels. No problems at all there. There is Philip Enrique still having battles, and as he comes into the pits behind Jason Whitehead, the two of them will go into pit lane together. Now that's interesting. Enrique, I think he's still carrying some preliminary damage from a couple of the moments earlier on in this race. That car particularly slow coming into pit lane, I notice. So big difficulties there essentially for Philip Enrique. I think that car is still basically on borrowed time, if you like, as Ross Smith has now come into the pits for his pit stop, and that has handed the lead of the race back again to JT Tammy. So now interesting actually, because of course JT Tammy came into the pits as a result of damage, but they will have used that chance to repair the car and get him back out onto the circuit again. So potentially that moment from the Ferrari that we kind of speared into the side of JT Tammy, that could have actually given Tammy a bit of a breather, but also it could have shifted the strategy up a bit, because he's now 9 seconds ahead of Smith. Maybe he's been able to work that back to his advantage.
Yeah, I think, as you say, he's pulled a masterstroke if that is the case. If that one little incident, and we don't often sit here and say incidents can give the advantage to the person who unfortunately got spun round, but for JT Tammy, it's looked like it works out well. There's Enrique. Kirby's now 1.7 back. He's got John Uyan in front of him. I'm sure Uyan's going to shift that other Panos out the way as soon as possible to allow Kirby to go through and battle onto the back of Dahlgren. It's down now to 1.4. Dahlgren over Funk. Funk's in the pits as well. So now that's going to release Dahlgren. That's going to release Kirby. There goes Uyan. Kirby's going to come through here as well. And now it's all about Kirby getting hold of Dahlgren and see if Dahlgren can hold him back here, Jake. My question though would be, can Kirby now go to the end? Is he done with his pit stops? Is he going to be finished, and can he get to the end of the race of what he's got left?
It is a bit tricky, isn't it? It's touch and go essentially, and now you can see, look, we're in that stage of the race now where we've only got 16 laps to go, and it's all about now just stretching these cars over those curbs to see what sticks, to see where the car can bite back in. So Magnus Dahlgren in the lead of the race for the time being with Funk in pit road, Kirby right behind him. This race can be decided by Dan Kirby, because if Kirby gets a little bit too close to Dahlgren before the pit stop happens, Dahlgren can actually back Kirby up a little bit here. Funk has rejoined, 47 seconds back from Dan Kirby, but Funk doesn't need to pit again, so Funk is going to be on fresh tyres. He can go gung-ho, he can charge here. For Kirby, I think this is actually going to be touch and go as to whether he needs to pit again. I think he'll need to, and if I'm Dan Kirby, I want to do that sooner rather than later. I don't want to be backed into the corner where I run out of time to catch up with Funk. I get myself into a position where at least I know that I've got a bit of time to catch him. If I'm Dan Kirby at this stage, I'm thinking, right, Kirby's come in for his final stop. It's touch and go as... Funk has come in for his final stop. It's touch and go as to whether I'll be able to catch him if I need to make another pit stop. Dahlgren could hold me up big time here. There's too many variables. If I'm Kirby, I'm not getting myself into hot water. I'm coming in, I'm keeping myself there or thereabouts, because when Funk made the pit stop, Kirby was what? 4 or 5 seconds behind him? So that gives him plenty of time to catch him and pass him before the end of the race. By staying out and getting held up by Dahlgren, he backs himself into no man's land.
Yeah, he does on that side of things as well. He definitely needs to, if he's going to clear Dahlgren, he needs to do it sooner or later. If he is on a very close strategy about going to get to the end here for Dan Kirby. Would you then, knowing that Dahlgren has probably got to go in again, I think he isn't done yet, I think he's got one more stop in him, would you rather go in at the same time as Dahlgren, knowing that he's clearly got the pace on Dahlgren, and that's no disrespect to Magnus Dahlgren in that Toyota, but Dan Kirby has just looked like an unstoppable boulder at the moment. He's just gone through and overtaken everyone and taken the lead and come back and done it again and done it again. Would you look at covering Dahlgren off and going in? Because if Kirby is on the edge, whether he's going to have half a lap of fuel or 0.2 of a lap of fuel or whatever fuel he's going to have left, if there's a slight inkling that he needs to pit again, would you go in behind Dahlgren if Dahlgren goes in this lap?
I mean, personally, if I'm Kirby, I wouldn't really focus on Dahlgren. Dahlgren isn't going to be the one that costs him the win here. It's going to be Ethan Funk that costs him the win. At the moment, they have a bit of a gap on him. But you don't want to spend too long sat behind Dahlgren. Dahlgren is struggling in some of these slower apexes. He's faster in a straight line, and that's actually going to impede Dan Kirby over time. So if I'm Kirby, I don't even really want to focus on Magnus Dahlgren. I want to pit in, I want to get into clear air, I want to start pushing. Because even if I'm going to come out behind Funk, I've still got time. It's all about the time factor now, because if he comes in now, he'll have about 13 laps to still play with Ethan Funk's gap. And if he gets onto fresher tyres, Kirby will be slightly quicker. Look at the rotation! The rotation on Dahlgren. That's the moment for Kirby. Kirby, you've got to pounce on this. You cannot afford to let him get back through. He's made that stick. That is a race-winning moment for Dan Kirby. He had to use that to get past Magnus Dahlgren at that point. Otherwise, he was going to run a massive risk of getting held up. That has just given Dan Kirby another option. It's given him another alternative. Now that he's got ahead of Dahlgren, he's got a second option. He's now got plan A and plan B. That was so valuable for Dan Kirby to get through.
Yeah, you can see it here with Dahlgren. He's coming up on that run now, down into turn 3. Turn 2, sorry. You can see what happens to Dahlgren here. He goes in, he starts sliding that back end. He tries to hang it around the inside of 3 there with Dan Kirby. Kirby just doesn't bottle it out. He puts his foot down, says, nope, I will have that over you. And he needed that for Dan Kirby. We can't express to you at home how important that was for Dan Kirby to clear Magnus Dahlgren. He's opened up 1.3 seconds already. Funk's 48 seconds back at the moment from Dahlgren. So he's about 50 seconds from Kirby. And at the moment here for Kirby, he's in that prime position. We are going to jump to another replay. And that, I believe, is Stephen Miller, who has just binned it coming round the last corner. He tried to hug the inside in that Mercedes to try and make the move past JT Tammy. Oh, steady on the rejoin there, son. And he is, and just manages it. Timon Suvic goes through as well there. Stephen Miller's, from Miller's side of things there, I think he tried to take the inside line. Put the gas down too early, the back end come round, he was looking for the run down, JT Tammy, looking to overtake him and get past the back marker, didn't quite manage it.
And that is what's going to colour things for the remaining 13 laps of this race. Here is JT Tammy, now the ipso facto leader of GT2. Smith is only 5 seconds back. So how crazy has this race been in GT2? Compared with JT Tammy and Ross Smith? We thought that 2 racers on track was going to make it slightly dull at times. Not even close to that, because Ross Smith had pressure from JT Tammy not once but twice in the first stint. Then they tangled when Ross Smith ran wide, and JT Tammy and Ross Smith then locked together and span off. JT Tammy then got sideswiped by a Ferrari, ending up having to come into the pits to kind of change up the strategy a little bit. But it's actually helped him, because after Ross Smith's final pit stop, he's now 5 seconds back from Tammy. So all of the changes and the chopping around has actually made GT2 one of the most irresistible battles of the race. Magnus Dahlgren, 2.7 back now from Kirby. If I'm Dahlgren, I'm pitting for fresh boots. I mean, what more are you going to get? You can secure second place, or you can lose it big time. At least with a fresher pair of boots on, you've got a chance. Now, here he goes. He is going to come into the pits, and it's exactly what Magnus Dahlgren needed to do. This is, for me, securing third position in that Toyota.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, he is going to be in fresher boots than Funk, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dahlgren does grab a second place here, depending on how close they come out together. And again, he's topsy-turvy in his pit box there, as we pick up on Ethan Funk at the moment. So let's see how close Funk can get here as well, and whether or not he's even going to be able to get near Dahlgren, or has Dahlgren done enough? But he was sliding for a couple of laps there, Jake, so I'm expecting some time lost from Dahlgren, because he was, it's almost like, I want to say he's Bambi on ice at one point, tiptoeing that Toyota around. Now here comes Funk now, he goes round 13, nice and clean from Ethan Funk, round 14 he goes. You know, Dahlgren's still not moved, he's still sat in there, he's still just sat there at the moment, and Funk is going to go through. Now it's all about whether or not Dahlgren's going to be able to catch Funk on fresh boots. He's still not moved here. The gap's extending and it's extending and it's extending, and for Dahlgren he's going to have a tough job even on fresh boots to get near Ethan Funk, I think.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to be in because he kind of ended up being backs to the wall. But again, it all comes down to the general balance of these cars. You want a car that's slightly slower because on a circuit like the Hungaroring, you want that little bit of extra time in the braking zone. You want that little bit of extra mechanical grip. So this is where the Nissan and the Mercedes and the Peugeots are actually better cars to shoot for than your Toyotas, your Ferraris. It's a much more rounded individual of a car. So you can get a little bit more out of it at the Hungaroring than perhaps you would, say, at Monza or Paul Ricard or Spa or those sort of circuits where it's all about straight line speed. It's about efficiency of mechanical grip here, so the shorter wheelbase car does have a better opportunity. We're with Felipe Henrique, who is now in that battle for position, trying to close up on one of the Mercedes cars in front of him. I believe that is Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers racing machine, and that is for position. There's only about a second and a half between them. Brian Hall having had a very interesting day at the office, shall we say, and of course Wayne Hutchison, the man just in front of him, and this is all for position on track. Let's not forget that either. So as Hutchison is there in position between Brian Hall and Philippe Henrique, this is a race battle. Henrique is going to come from a long way back to dive in on Wayne Hutchison and trust that Hutchison is just going to move aside and let him go. That's very brave from Philippe Henrique, but Wayne Hutchison doesn't feel he has to. So he decides to see what can happen. Enrique just decides to commit, but he's taken such a tight trajectory. He actually cost himself there. So by getting past Wayne Hutchison with a very determined stance, look at the gap that Brian Hall has now pulled back out on Enrique and Hutchison. Yes, Enrique got one move done, but he's now hurt himself in getting the second one done. Perhaps just a little bit too eager.
Yeah, them Toyotas have not been looking comfortable rearing Yuji on shots. He didn't do it last lap when he lost the position. I am as well for Dahlgren. I'm surprised he didn't go in. He come out about 23 seconds back. He's now just touching on 22, so he has pulled out about a second, but he's only got 10 laps to get 20 seconds here. He needs to be on at least 2 seconds a lap before he would even touch on to Ethan Funk, and that alone will be on the last lap for Dahlgren. So Dahlgren's got to make up some time. He's got to get a lot. Keep an eye on the lap times for their last lap times as well, and we'll see what happened. The predicted lap time for Magnus Dahlgren 1:39. The predicted for Funk is 1:42. If that is the case, he will pull out enough over this lap, but he's got to do that consistently for the next 10 laps to get up onto the back of Funk on the last lap. We could have a last lap shootout here, depending on how Magnus Dahlgren copes in that Toyota, which we have seen has not been going so well for the likes of Enrique, for the likes of Dahlgren here as well. It's just a lot more sliding going on from the Toyota, a lot more going in deep into corners, not being able to get the car stopped as well, and that's one of the things that Dahlgren has got to overcome for the next 10 laps to be able to get onto Ethan Funk, probably on the very last lap. Is Kirby done in the pits? Well, we are optimistic that Kirby should be done here, Jake, but to be honest with you, we're not really sure, are we, whether or not he's going to have enough to get to the end.
It's not just him, it's his teammate John Houillard as well. Both the CMS Pro Peugeots are really leaving this to the last possible moment to make that third pit stop. I noticed as well, Wouter de Bruin hasn't made a third pit stop yet either, nor has the Kowalski Toyota of Timon Suvik. So there's several drivers that are going to lead this to the very end of the race if they're going to make the pit stop. I thought for a moment there Kirby was going to duck in, but has decided against it, certainly for the time being. But Suvik is in the pit, so Suvik in the Kowalski Toyota has decided to come in for that third pit stop. Just trying to look and see where everyone else is in relation to each other. Stephen Miller hasn't come in for the third pit stop yet either. Obviously, we have not seen JT Tammy or Ross Smith come in for a third stop, and I don't think you're likely to now, of course. But everybody else, it's basically Kirby and Uyan in the Paynos cars, and Wouter de Bruin in the Rookie Monster Mercedes. Everybody else has done 3 pit stops, so it'll be interesting to see how this one clears out. But look at the pace from Magnus Dahlgren. The gap down to 15 seconds now. The car seems to have got better as the race has transgressed. In that first sector, the car was nowhere really in terms of raw consistency. But Dahlgren has got to understand the car a little bit better over this race. And now look, he is just eating away at the gap to Ethan Funk. If I'm Kirby, and we know we've got to make a third pit stop, don't wait any longer. Do it now, because you've got a little bit more time to play with. Yes, you're going to have 54 seconds on Funk, and that's touch and go as to whether you'll take the lead again. But you'll have fresher tyres than Funk, fresher tyres than Dahlgren. You buy yourself that little bit of extra leeway.
Yeah, definitely there as well. Dahlgren has pulled out a chunk of time. We were talking a few laps back, he had 20 seconds. We're now a few laps further on, and he's down to 14 seconds. 1:44 for Funk last time, 1:39.9 for Dahlgren. Can he get him, Jake? Can Dahlgren get him? We said it's going to be close if they're going to come together on the last lap. What do we reckon? Jake, we're up here in the booth. What do we think? Is he going to be able to get him, or is he not?
It's going to be tricky, because looking at the sort of the pace that Dahlgren's got, he's clearly quicker than Funk consistently, but Funk is going to be able to make that car particularly wide over the course of the remainder of this race. So overtaking opportunities are going to be few and far between for that Toyota. We know it's quick in a straight line, but everywhere else, that's where it sort of ends up having a bit of a hiccup. So it's not guaranteed yet, really, that that car is going to have the strong pace. So it is tricky to calculate whether or not that car is actually going to have the legs on the Depth Racing Nissan. The only advantage it has got, essentially, is A, straight line speed, and B, tyre management. So the tyre management is going to be less for Dahlgren because he pitted later than Funk. I'm very impressed with the way that Ethan Funk has driven that Depth Nissan into a race potentially winning position. It's all going to come down to whether that Paynos needs to go for a third stop. And I think because of how far into the race Dan Kirby and the CMS Pro Paynos took it, that is actually debatable. Do they need that third pit stop or not? If they don't, and they can just run on lift and coast, then Kirby, with that gap currently at about half a minute, 48 seconds or so, 49 seconds or so, on lift and coast alone, that could be enough for Kirby. But surely he's got to consider that third pit stop. We don't know whether the Paynos is going to have to make one or not. It's very tough to tell.
3.1 seconds. Dahlgren pulled out of Funk on the last lap. A 43.7, 40.6. So we can see on the lost and gain there, Kirby up 2, Yuyan up 1, Garrick up 2. Corby down 4 in the Bros. We're not too sure what happened to Corby, but he is down 4. Suvic, Whitehead up 1 apiece, and then De Bruin down 3, who we know has had somewhat of a, rotten race, to be honest. In the GT2, GT1 AMS, we've got Day up 1, Hutchinson up 2. We've lost Phil Nerve out of that. Becky Ely is, I believe she's back out on track. So there's something happening with Becky Ely, whether or not that's 6 laps down at the moment. So I think that's technical situations for Becky Ely, whether or not that could be driving in VR, could be disconnects, we're not sure on that one. And of course we know that JT Tummy and Ross Smith are still down in the LMGT2s, the only guys left on there. Gap down to 8.6 here as well. It's looking like another 3-second gain for Ethan Funk. Keep an eye in the background. There he is, coming round the last corner. That lap for Ethan Funk, 1:43.8 for Magnus Dahlgren. He's going to be going across the line very, very shortly. I think he's already over a 1:40.7. Another 3 seconds there, Jake. I know we're doubting Magnus Dahlgren in that Toyota, but it is close as we see Whitehead just get overtaken there from Suvic, I believe, and Suvic does manage to get through. Going to be close with Dahlgren and Funk.
It really is, and especially now that Dahlgren is making up so much time over such a short space of the racing lap. Again, Dahlgren in the first sector, 35.2. Funk in the first sector, 36.1. So the pace has just fallen. It's just completely plummeted for the Nissan. So Magnus Dahlgren doesn't even have to try that hard here. Just needs to keep his current pace and hope that Funk is going to have him as well. Right, Kirby is in. Kirby is in. Right, this is where the race is going to be won and lost. I was doubtful as to whether the Panos could go the full distance without a third stop. I wonder, have they left it just the tiniest bit too late into the race? If Funk and Dahlgren disappear through, then Kirby is really going to struggle to come through. Now, Kirby is getting out of the pits, so because it's a short stop, they've done that. No problem at all. I did wonder how much time they were going to lose, but there, Kirby again exits the pits. Because it was only a short fuel stop, they've done everything they needed to do. Just 11 seconds stationary. No need to change anything else. So for Kirby, all fine and dandy. 11 seconds. I don't even think they needed to change the tyres there. So no problems at all for Kirby. That's the race-winning pit stop. Why take the risk? Just make it sure, get it done with decent enough laps in hand. But Dahlgren absolutely eating up the road to Ethan Funk. Second position, absolutely game on. And when you are losing that much time to the car behind you, it doesn't matter how wide you make it. I mean, the tyre grip has just plummeted off the cliff for the depth Nissan. Finishing third is going to be the maximum they can achieve, but keeping Dahlgren back is going to be an absolute mission now.
One of the things I'd like to point out as well, Dahlgren over that last lap there, Jake, he's just lost 1.4 seconds. He was stuck behind a Ferrari. I couldn't tell which one it was, whether it was Day or Angelidis, but he was stuck behind one of the Ferraris there, and he's just lost 1.4 seconds. Is that Dahlgren now gone? Can he pick that pace up? He's got 9 seconds, 5 laps to do it, 3 seconds a lap. It's going to be within the next few laps, by about lap 62, 63. If he does get there, he's going to get there, and it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. But for Dahlgren losing that 1.4 seconds, he is going to lose a lot of time.
Do you know what? James, I think it started raining. It started raining with 5 laps to go.
That can't be.
Oh my goodness. Well, this changes everything, because if the rain is coming down at the Hungaroring, this throws an absolute curveball into everything here. And you start to wonder, if that is rain, Kirby will be kicking himself that he didn't leave it another lap, because if he left it one more lap, he would have had no problems at all. Now, this is a replay of Dahlgren trying to... Oh! Now that's... No, that's Felipe Enrique, isn't it? That's Enrique nudging Wayne Hutchison into a spin. Oh, it's Stephen Miller in the Speed Mercedes. Okay, so Miller going around, and he was a lap down on Felipe Enrique. So there is Stephen Miller, currently looking at 4th position in the GT1 AM category. That was nearly 4th position in class for Becky Ely, wasn't it? Because if Miller was out of the race, that, I assume, is probably why Becky Ely is still going, because if somebody drops out, then obviously she can pick up the 4th place, but not now, because we're on to lap 60. And so, obviously, she won't quite complete as many laps as the drivers around her. So, a real headache for the McLaren F1s, as only one of them will finish, and they'll finish in dead last for poor Becky Ely. Not where she deserves to be at all, but that gap is coming down again for Dahlgren. 7 seconds now behind Ethan Funk, and you can see the windscreen wipers going on the Nissan R390. You cannot make the pit stop for wet tyres, though. You cannot afford to do that, because even though it's raining, it's not going to rain anywhere near enough to make the gamble to tyres. So now, with 5 laps to go, it literally just comes down to keep it out there. Try not to overdrive the car. Be a little bit fluid on the throttle application. You cannot afford to get too much slip. You cannot afford to get too much wheel spin, because it will kill your chances of coming through onto the podium. You've got to be so delicate on touch now. You've got to be very minute in terms of your steering input. You've got to be very careful on throttle application. Everything's just got to be on tenterhooks. It is not clear-cut. One mistake, this race changes. Kirby in the lead is not even safe at this point. Yes, he's got 28 seconds on Funk, but all it takes is one mistake and you're in that barrier. Boom. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, definitely. They have got to be a little bit gentle here as well. Ethan Funk, last lap, 1:43.9. Dahlgren, we know, had to put out a chunk of time. He's done a 1:42.4. I don't know here, Jake, if Dahlgren's done enough. I think this rain has really scuppered Dahlgren's run here on Ethan Funk. We know the Toyotas were looking a little bit squirrely and a little bit loose throughout the race. And for Dahlgren now, he's got to try and get Funk. Funk's up the road. We've just seen him go round. He's on that run up into turn 4 already. And for Magnus Dahlgren,
it's the same problem as sector 1.
Go. Yeah, he's sliding again.
It's the same problem as the first stint, where the Toyota is unsteady, it's uncertain, and he's learnt the car for these dry conditions. But now, because the rain has come and he's on the dry tyres that are slowly getting weaker by the lap, this is the problem for Dahlgren. He can't afford to commit in quite the same way to these braking points as he could earlier on. He can't afford to take that same gamble. Having said that, Funk just did a 36.3 in Sector 1 compared to Dahlgren on a 35.9. But essentially, Dahlgren's got to learn the characteristics of the car again while trying to catch the guy in second place, while trying not to overstretch it. He's just got to hope that the Nissan tyres completely disintegrate in terms of traction and grip. He's got to hope that he's just got that little bit more momentum in the closing stages. And he does seem to have pace. 4.3 seconds is now the gap. So it does look as though Dahlgren is still making a gain on Ethan Funk. But this is going to be a last lap job, isn't it? Surely he's only going to really be on him on the final lap of the race.
Yeah, as we predicted, I think Dahlgren will be a final lap run, and it's going to be a one-shot deal for Magnus Dahlgren. He is not going to have another opportunity, another bite at a cherry, another snatch at the apple, whatever you want to say. He is not getting that opportunity. 145 for Funk, 143 for Dahlgren, so he's closed in again. If he gets another 2 seconds, he's going to get another 2 seconds after that as well, and it is going to be a last lap shootout. This is Whitehead and Suvik. Whitehead was a lot closer, but he made a mistake and has allowed Suvik to open up a little bit of a gap. I'm not talking massive, guys, we're talking a very short period of time. Oh,
there goes Suvik.
Suvik in the wall, and that's allowed Whitehead to go through. So unfortunately for Timur Suvik, just as I was picking him up a little bit, Timur Suvik goes and makes a mistake. So unfortunately for him, there on that one. Smith's gone into the pits, I think, on here as well, I've just heard. So we'll keep an eye on what Smith's been up to.
And you know what? That's actually really smart from Ross Smith. Why not? You're already in second place to Tammy by about 10 seconds anyway. Why not gamble? Why not roll the dice? From his perspective, he's only going to be 30 seconds back from Tammy. If his decision to change the tyre compound is going to work, then what's he going to lose at the end of the day? He may as well gamble it. He may as well go, do you know what? If Tammy throws it into the wall because he's got no grip, and I have got grip, I'm going to win this race. That's really smart thinking from Ross Smith, because when you've only got 2 of you in the race anyway, and you know you're 10 seconds back from Tammy, there's got to be something to shake it up. Something's got to make the difference. So why not just throw the dice, come in, change the tyre compound, have a little bit of a better grip in the last couple of laps? Because if Tammy throws that into the wall, he won't get a second chance. Ross Smith has bought himself another go at the victory.
Yeah, smart move from Ross Smith. This is Wouter de Bruin down in 11th place at the moment. As we know, he's had a very up and down race. Still chasing down Brian Hall in 10th. In front of him, you can see Hall there just going round the left-hander of 2 before they go through 3, and on that run up the hill into 4. Now this is where the curbs are going to play a massive part. Even slightly damp curbs are dangerous regardless of that as well, so they've got to be a little bit more careful in this situation. As much as you'd love to ride the curbs, you just can't, especially when it's raining. Dahlgren has had a slow lap here. He's not going to keep pulling out a chunk of time over Funk in front of him. He's near enough dead on the same amount of time if they go over the line. I think it's going to be Dahlgren where he is at the moment. I don't think he's going to have enough here to try and close up to the back of Funk, and I think this rain has cost Dahlgren his run. And
I think you're right.
Because he had the Toyota hooked up, didn't he? He was pulling out mountains of time over him. Rain comes down, be on ice again for the Toyota.
So Kirby is going to start the final lap of the race then. So Kirby in position to finish this off, and this is the easiest lap in history for him under the circumstances. Even though it's tricky grip, he can take his time about it. He can literally just cruise through every single corner. Dahlgren is going to be at this like a cat out of a bag in the hope that Funk is going to make a mistake. But look at the sector times. Funk's done a 37.2, Dahlgren's done a 37.3. in the first sector. In the second sector, Funk's done a 40.3, Dahlgren's done a 40.3. I think you're absolutely right, James. His advantage has just been completely wiped out. He knew what the car was doing in the dry conditions. He knew he had the upper hand. He knew he had speed. But this rain has just completely changed the behavior of the car. And so he's not been able to gain anything. Look how difficult it is to get on the power for Wouter de Bruin. He really struggles to get purchase there off the throttle out of turn 1 as the car squirrels around. So it's very tricky, but it's certainly looking good for Kirby to finish this one. 27 seconds to the good on Funk, and I don't think Dahlgren's going to get the chance to get into second place.
No, I think it's going to be done and dusted here as well. Kirby's coming round turn 13. He's got 2 more to go. Sorry, he's on that run round into... He is actually on that run down from 11 into 12 there. Sorry, he got a little bit lost where he was on track. He's got literally the right-hander of 12, the left-hander of 13, the right-hander of 14 to go, and then Dan Kirby will take this victory in the Hungaroring. Round we go, turn 13. He's just got to wrap up. Turn 14, he's got to keep it in now. He can afford to make mistakes. He's got a 27-second lead. Dan Kirby has been an absolute unstoppable brick wall here. CMS Pro, Panos GTR. Kirby comes over the line, takes that victory in the LMGT1. Funk looks like he's going to wrap up. Second place, he's got Boreck in front of him at the moment as well. Funk comes round turn 13. Dahlgren could have, should have, would have, but unfortunately he didn't. So now even Funk in that depth race in Nissan R390 comes over the line. He manages to hold on. He takes the second place there as well. Oliver Day looks like he's going to wrap up the LMGT1s. Dahlgren comes over the line in third. Day's finished as well in that LMGT1 AMS, and it was an epic race of pit strategies, Jake, and I think that's what we've looked at here as well. An epic race of just sheer class driving. That rain scuppered Dahlgren right at the end when we were kind of almost robbed of an epic second place battle between Funk and Dahlgren there that was going to come down to the last lap. I predicted it, you predicted it as well, and unfortunately rain is the story of the day right at the end, but a great race there from everyone.
Yeah, the rain certainly decided it, but it was good to see that Kirby, Funk and Dahlgren all had parts to play in the closing stages. Yeah. We've got a feel for Magnus Dahlgren to a certain extent. That rain coming at exactly the wrong moment to give him the chance to go for second position. Totally robbed for him. Some real star turns. I was very impressed with Oliver Day, how he managed to keep the consistency flowing through to keep him into position to get the win. He comes through now to take the checkered flag. A good run then from Oliver Day. Unchallenged in the end, really, for the GT1 AM victory as his opponents kind of fell by the wayside. You've got to feel for Becky Ely. For me, she was definitely the star of the first half of the race before it all came away. For me, the second half of the race, the star of the day was Magnus Dahlgren in the second half. He finally learned what the Toyota was doing. He learned the behavior of the car. He learned where it was going to be deficient and efficient. But the rain just ruining the chances. Very unfortunate indeed that it all kind of disappeared in the closing stages for him. But great racing from Dan Kirby. Phenomenal victory from Oliver Day. Not really looking out of sorts at any point through the course of the race. Also very strong from JT Tammy. Despite having everything thrown at him, he came through for a very deserving GT2 victory. And yeah, great to see that all three of the winners absolutely deserving to get there.
Yeah, I fully agree. It was some great driving, but here are the results. Dan Kirby is your winner. Ethan Funk in second. Magnus Dahlgren in third. That's your 1, 2, 3s. And then you've got John Uyan in fourth. Alec Goretzka in fifth. Risto Corpi finishes sixth in the end. It'd be so interesting to find out what happened to him. Oliver Day does take the victory in the LMGT1 AMS ahead, believe it or not, of the pros of Jason Whitehead, Timon Subic, and Brian Hall from that Hall Brothers Racing Mercedes-Benz CLK down in 10th place. We'll move on to the next set of results. Wouter de Bruin, well, he's just had an absolute race to forget for Wouter de Bruin. Wayne Hutchinson wrapping up that second place as well. George Angelidis in third here in the LMGT1 AMS, and then Felipe Enrique, another Toyota driver that has struggled here today. Stephen Miller in 15th, and then Gilles Lalonde in 16th, another man that's just going to be glad to get out of this Hungaroring in that Panos. JT Tammy does win the GT2s there as well. JT Tammy does finish ahead of Ross Smith. And then, of course, we've got Becky Ely, who unfortunately was a long way back in that Gulf Racing McLaren. Clearly had some issues throughout the race, whether that was technical or disconnects, or it was actually disconnects. She disconnected twice throughout that race for Becky Ely. Went on to finish, but unfortunately, 6 laps down, I believe it was. Gilles Villeneuve on the DNF there as well. One of only 2 drivers that we lost throughout this race. And Pedro Crulas Gomez was the other driver we lost early on as well. So that is your results. Some incredible driving there as well. And unfortunately for Becky Ely, disconnect twice would have been her best result ever. But we can have a chat with Dan Kirby now, your winner. Dan, welcome in, sir. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Do you know what? You're so cool. You are cooler than a cucumber there as well, because you just come in and go, yeah, I'm pretty good. I just won a race. I've absolutely gone out and smashed it. I've taken the victory by 27 seconds. And you finished. Bro, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I'm kind of chill because you have to drive these things kind of chill. You can't be like super aggressive with them. Ugh.
Yeah, but how tough was it though in that Panos? You know, you didn't. I've got to be honest, Dan. You didn't look like you were under threat at all throughout that race. I could have banked on you and put my mortgage on you halfway through the race. To be honest with you, you just looked so comfortable.
Yeah, the car was working good, and I was getting in a pretty good rhythm. But it was really interesting strategy-wise because it was kind of like flip-flopping between me, Ethan, and Magnus, and I wasn't really sure which strategy was going to work until like the last, I don't know, 10 laps or something. Then I finally realized, oh, I think I'm actually going to win.
Did it not cross your mind halfway through that you might have, you would have taken the victory?
Well, in the first stint, it was looking like good because I pulled away. But when I pit for the first one, Magnus went to like lap 22 or something like that, and I was thinking, I think that means he can only 2 stop instead of us having to 3 stop. So I was quite a bit worried about his pace. But then he pit early for his second stop, so I was like, okay, I think I'm looking a little better then. But yeah, I was quite worried about Magnus' strategy.
Yeah, but to be honest, in that Toyota, Magnus didn't look comfortable. And we said that as the race went on. You know, the Toyota at the beginning, it might as well just have been on ice you were driving, because Magnus looked very uncomfortable. He hooked it up after the first pit stop, and he kind of got to grips with the car. You know, he was closing on Funk as well. And unfortunately, the rain coming down at the end. Just how much of a problem was the rain? It didn't look like it didn't really affected the car in general or the track. So, you know, did the rain bother you that much as it was coming into the end?
Yeah, luckily it wasn't too bad. It was just a very light drizzle, so it took like a couple laps for it to even like do anything. But I only really felt a slight loss in grip and braking, so I was already lifting, coasting into braking zones anyway, so it wasn't too difficult.
Okay. Well, Dan, congratulations on your 3rd victory of the season. Anyone you want to shout out before I let you go? Dan?
No, I'm all right.
You good? All right, mate. Awesome stuff. Well, there you go, guys. That was Dan Kirby. Congratulations on your LMGT1 victory.
Yeah, thank you.
And now we've got Oliver Day in the broadcast booth here as well. The LMGT1 victory. Victor, I should say. Oliver, welcome in. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks.
Good. Good race from you. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, that was busy. I didn't actually really know what was going on. So I just tried to push as hard as I could and see what happened.
Well, you definitely did. You were helped a bit by the fact that Becky Ely had a couple of disconnects throughout the race. Did you think knowing that Becky had the pace early on, did you think you could get near her?
Well, we had, I guess, different pit stop strategies or just different capabilities of the car. I'm still getting to know what all these cars do, but I was looking forward to seeing how that was going to turn out, right? Because I got dumped out ahead of her and built up a lead, and then by the time she was catching me up, her tires would have been going off and my fuel would have been low. So the pace kind of evened out. So over the whole race, I was wondering where that was going to turn out, but I thought probably second was where I was going to head, but with a slight shot of first.
Well, it was that slight shot. Did turn out to be right on the money there for you as well. Yes, it was helped, but you had to keep the car on track. You had to keep that Ferrari free on the grey stuff, ready to take that victory, Oliver, and you did do that. Just how tricky was the rain at the end? Did it affect you as much as what we thought it might do in the booth?
No, it was actually all right, but for me, it slowed the pace down just enough to start losing concentration a bit, because before that, there was fight with traffic, there was fight with the other cars, and everything was battling. And then all of a sudden, nobody's around and it starts to rain a little bit, so you're easing off. And yeah, it's the concentration that was tough at the end.
Yeah, definitely. On that one, we did say it was going to be definitely a hard concentration track, because that is just what the Hungaroring brings to you there as well. But Oliver, well done on your victory. Anyone you want to shout out before we let you go?
I guess I should say some thanks to Risto, because I think he did all right coming back in the pro category, but him and I worked on the setup a little bit. So he helped me get up to speed, and Mike before that. And yeah, now I feel kind of comfortable. It's good. And Ross and all the other folks here in the league.
Awesome stuff. Well, Oliver, well done, and congratulations there as well. And look forward to having a chat as the season goes on. But for now, your LMGT1 AM winner, Oliver Day. Congratulations, sir.
Cheers.
All right. There you go, guys, as well. That has been the VWSC Round 8 from the Hungaroring here as well. Thank you to everybody who has been in chat. Thank you to you all who has stuck with us. Phil across the pond, Mr. Reese, Rhea there as well. Seems I missed the race. Yes, you did. You're coming right at the end. So unfortunately for you. Stravex as well. Go Smith, thank you so much for joining us up here as well. But I think we can honestly say for the Hungaroring, that was a really good race. Well done to Dan Kirby. Congratulations to Ethan Funk. Well done to Magnus Dahlgren. You're 1, 2, 3 in the LMGT1s in the AMs. Day, Hutchinson and Angelidis. And then in the LMGT2s, of course, we only had 2 cars on track. JT Tammy and Ross Smith. And Tammy come out victorious. But I think, guys, for now, that is going to wrap up this broadcast here from the VWSC here as well. From myself, Jake Sampson, has been with me in the booth, and from Paul Glover, who's been providing these amazing pictures for us. Thank you very much. You all take care. Have a great week. And you never know, we might see you on the track sometime. Good night.